Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the Marion County Community Redevelopment Area, the CRA Agency Board meeting. We have a continuation or continued meeting from our October 15th, 2019 meeting that we will be conducting before we go into our regularly scheduled zoning meeting. So with that said, if you could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, can we have roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Chairman Bryant?
Here.
Vice Chairman Gold?
Here.
Commissioner Moore?
Here.
Commissioner Zalek?
Here.
Commissioner Stone? Here.
Okay, and before we get started, I am going to go ahead and make an announcement regarding our zoning meeting. For any of you that might be here regarding the Orange Blossom Park special use permit and government use, that item has been pulled from today's meeting and will be continued for review and be continued at a further date. So we will not be discussing that item today. If you are here for that specific item, I want to let you know now. We would love to have you all stay with us for our entire meeting, but if that's why you're here and you want to leave, take the opportunity to run. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go into our CRA meeting. And the first item on the agenda is to adopt the minutes, item number 3.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Zalek with a second by Commissioner Stone. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That item passes unanimously.
Although there were no minutes, actually, just to let you know.
Yeah, I see that there now. That's why I looked over at you
I was
like,
you were fast.
we were just going with it. Anyway, and so item number 4, scheduled items, we don't have anything under that. Item number 5, our new business, we have 3 separate items under that, and I'm going to go ahead and turn to you, Mr. Risen, so you can get us going on A.
The first 2 items are actually our first applications for our Security Improvements Grant Program that the CRA created and approved. One is for the Silver Springs Plaza Shopping Center, which includes the Silver Springs Pawn and Gun and the restaurant and some other retail locations. It's the angled one on the corner of 25th Avenue and Highway 40. And then the other is for the Event Warehouse, which is on the north side of State Road 40, just a little distance down from the plaza. They are both requesting the grant for security cameras to install those to help for crime prevention and activities. They submitted their applications and staff is recommending approval of those applications. And if you'd like, you can entertain them in one motion.
Very good. I'm glad to see that we're finally able to get some of these funds dispersed back into the community.
So moved.
Second.
So I have a motion by Commissioner Zalek with a second by Commissioner Stone for approval of 5A and 5B. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. And then,
Item number C is a notation for record. It was the last month's report for our prior fiscal year for the Silver Spring Sheriff's Detail. Additionally, Lieutenant Curtis is here, and he actually has some information on some other special detail activities that the Sheriff's Office did that he'd like to go ahead and provide for you.
okay, wonderful. Lieutenant Curtis, it's always a pleasure to see you. Would you like to come up to the podium and share some of the things that hopefully are beginning to be good things out in our Silver Springs CRA?
I'd love to. Thank you for having me up. My name is Carlton Curtis. Address 692 Northwest 30th Avenue, Ocala, Florida. Is that all I need?
Yeah.
Just make sure.
You don't even have to do all that, but
okay,
thank you.
Okay, gotcha. Well, the numbers from the CRA that you guys are graciously allowing us to do look pretty good this past month, or this was actually for September. I think October we didn't have it, but September, was it October we didn't have it because we were in the middle?
We were in the transition for
Yep.
it, so I think we had maybe a little bit, but not a full month's worth.
So for the September, it was 14 arrests, 5 felony charges, 11 misdemeanors, 103 business contacts, 86 security checks, 2 5-0s where we just check out with people that are suspicious and document them. So it was a good month. We got some of the people taken away. The guys are doing a great job out there making contacts with these folks, getting a lot of the people trespassed from some of these businesses. above and beyond that, in October and November, the guys put together details on their own. One of the details, it was partially in the city, partially out there in the CRA area. But they did a phenomenal job. They had a total of 34 people arrested, 18 felony charges, 24 misdemeanors, 208 traffic stops, 152 warnings, which gives us a lot of information on these folks that are out there. 44 tickets written. They arrested 2 people on warrants, 1 DUI charge, and then a couple of 5-0s. So it was a really productive night that night. One other one that they did, they arrested 11 folks, did 12 5-0s, identifying people out there that just we probably don't want out in the area. Got a heroin arrest, methamphetamine arrest. I'm telling you, I'm out there quite often, and it's amazing that just about anybody you pat down out there has needles on them. The homeless folks, it's amazing how many of them have this stuff. And if we can get something to test out of these needles, then we can take them to jail for the paraphernalia. The guys have been, again, they've been phenomenal. They're targeting the area. I think one of my biggest frustrations that I've been noticing is now all of a sudden they're taking shopping carts like that's their property and putting all their property in it and pushing it down the road. So that's our next goal, is start targeting these folks that are wandering with these shopping carts. But overall, the guys are doing a good job. When you drive through there, it definitely seems like things are slowing down some. We got a lot of good things going on above and beyond the CRA stuff, and I think we're going to see benefits down the road. Thank you so much for approving these cameras. I hope all that goes in, because the business owners out there, they need it, and it's a tremendous asset to the sheriff's office. When we have crime out there, these cameras, it's amazing what they capture. And I just can't thank you enough for doing that. And I'm hoping more people get on board, because the more cameras and video footage we get from that area, better we're going to identify and combat the crime out there. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, Lieutenant Curtis, thank you so much for being with us today. And at our morning meeting, we discussed the panhandling issue, and Mr. Mentor is going to be reaching out to.
Got it.
You got it. All
Yes,
right.
ma'am.
So I think that there are some additional steps that we can now feel very confident in taking in dealing with that as well. And we really appreciate you and your guys' efforts in combating the issues that we've been facing out in this area for quite some time. And I hope that everyone within the Silver Springs area knows now that this board is committed to making that the gateway, cleaning up our gateway into that side of the county. And we're super excited, like I said, to be able to get some of this funding into the hands of the business owners out there that make a difference every day as well. And I'm guessing that you guys are tackling this almost like a community policing thing. You're forming relationships with those business owners as well and people in the area.
We're making a lot of contacts, getting a lot of trespass authorizations for the properties out there, which is a big help for us. When we get those, it's just a benefit where we can go there and trespass these folks, especially after hours if the business owners aren't there. And that's just, it's a slow process, but it's just, it's a gradual, let's move them out somewhere else. That's our goal, and let them find a better place to go stay, maybe in another county or something like that. So.
Well, I'm hoping that this combined effort is giving those business owners the confidence in our Marion County Sheriff's Office and the Marion County Board of County Commissioners to our commitment.
Well, please, any feedback you get from them that you hear, give them my number, and I will do everything I can to make them happy and do what we can to keep the crime down. So that's our goal. So.
Awesome. And I'm actually going to go off script just a little bit here, because I do see some of those business owners out in the audience, and I'm going to give them the opportunity to come up if they would like to. If they don't want to, that's fine. But we would love to hear their feedback as well if they're willing to come up to the podium. She's like, oh man, they're going to make me come up here again.
Hi, Pamela Thompson, 5361 East Silver Springs Boulevard, Silver Springs, Florida, 34488. I've been working a lot with Lieutenant Curtis and with Mr. Eisen and everything, and also with Silver Springs Plaza. And so we're thankful to get these cameras up. I already have it scheduled for Monday installation.
Great.
We need to have them. And so they'll also be available for, the guys in the sheriff's office whenever they're wanting to see what activity is going on, mostly after hours. And I think a lot of the things now are after hours and targeting the nighttime. As we're getting closer to the holidays, we see more and more activity. So we're really wanting to get these put up right away so that we, because we're seeing a lot of activity and people coming into our businesses that, I had a gang member come in the other day asking for water and wanting to know what time we close. I'm a bridal store.
Right.
There's a sicko across the street. There was no reason for him to be in my store asking those questions. And, we have young employees and it makes us feel very uncomfortable. But besides calling the sheriff's office non-emergency number, we also call the district, and they're very good about putting emails out to the deputies. And I've had some activity there where when my little temporary camera that I have now pops up, and I've had some deputies sitting in the parking lot at night. So it's good to know that they're in the area and patrolling.
Well, you're out there every day, and you've been instrumental in getting us to the point of where we are on some of these things. So we always welcome your comments and your suggestions because, as I said, we are committed to the Silver Springs area and to the revitalization of it.
Well, thank you. And we've spread the word. We've had several people that have contacted me, and I passed them on to Mr. Risen. So I think we're going to see more businesses get involved, and we need to get a lot of these vacant lots taken care of to where, the motel next to me just cut down all the trees that were between our two businesses. And although now my building doesn't necessarily look as great, but it's nice that we now don't have people that can stand there
Right.
where those trees are. And they were always putting trash into the trees. And so now it's a clean shot. You can see all the way down in between the buildings. So that's, that's another preventative measure that I think will be very good.
Very good. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Hi.
Michelle Nappy, 5300 East Silver Springs Boulevard, Silver Springs 34488. I wanted to thank you. The property that is across the street on 40 from our plaza was bush hogged and cleaned up, and that's made a big difference. And I know now they're working on getting rid of the golf course, which has been a big issue, trying to get that knocked down and cleaned up. I appreciate anybody who had anything to do with that. It is where they've gone into the woods and pulled out, 12 and 15 people. One of the heroin incidents, and we've had someone that was on our roof. It was in the paper where, they had all kinds of paraphernalia and things there. So I'm glad that person is now not in the area. It's coming around. It's making a difference. We're doing our part. You're willing to welcome to trespass anybody that's on our corner of the property. We have a pretty good section there, and sadly, it's wooded mostly around. So our cameras are planning. They should be going up in 3 weeks. They're going to put out 16 cameras. Obviously, anything they need to use that to clean up the area is very welcome.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
again, thank you for being with us today. All right, Commissioners, Chris, you have no further business,
No
correct?
further business, ma'am.
Got one
Commissioners,
quick
any
question.
comments? Yes.
Chris, do you have an idea how much more funding is available through that security improvement grant?
We've gross budgeted for both of our grant programs a block amount, and currently we would have $75,000 available with having already had these two expenses. I have had contacts with about 5 different owners, one of which is the mini golf site. So they're looking at both the security improvements to clear the underbrushing, and then also the demolition grant for the building grants to go ahead and do the demolition for it. And I've also had another building improvement one with the Silver Springs Post Office for them to do some updates and upgrading to their site as well as also the security grant as well.
Okay, good.
That's good.
Let's get that money out.
Absolutely. All right, anything else? All right, so with that, we are going to adjourn our CRA meeting, and we will be starting our zoning meeting in just a couple minutes. We have to give our tech people a few minutes to set up, so if you could just bear with us for that. We'll be getting going here in a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pretty sure it is.
Interfere with what that woman wants to do.
Is that vodka?
Okay, so we are back on. Madam Clerk, I believe that you need to, first of all, let me welcome everybody to the Planning and Zoning and DRC waiver request of our zoning meeting. Today's date is November the 19th, 2019, and we will start this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you could all stand with me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, roll call.
Yes, ma'am. Chairman Bryant?
Here.
Vice Chairman Gold?
Here.
Commissioner Moore?
Here.
Commissioner Zalek?
Here.
Commissioner Stone?
Here. And proof of publications.
Yes, ma'am. I have 4 proof of publications for today's hearings. First proof of publication is in regard to item 14A6. I have proof of publication of a display ad entitled Notice of Change of Land Use published in the Star-Bearer newspaper on October 14, 2019. Second proof of publication is in regard to item 14C2. I have proof of publication of a display ad entitled Notice of Change of Land Use published in the Star-Bearer newspaper on October 14, 2019. Third proof of publication is proof of publication of a display ad entitled Notice of Change of Land Use published in the Star-Banner newspaper on October 14, 2019. And the final proof of publication, I have proof of publication of legal ad number A000960632 entitled Notice of Intention to Consider Adoption of an Ordinance published in the Star-Banner newspaper on November 4, 2019.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, before we get started today, we're going to do a couple of housekeeping items. Number 1, again, I'll say if you are here for item 14C8, which is the Orange Blossom Hills or Orange Blossom Park special use permit, that item has been pulled and will come back at a later date. We are taking that back for further review and consideration. So we will not be considering item 14C8 today. So if you're here for that, again, feel free to stay with us for the afternoon, or you may get up and walk out the door. That's fine. Second, please make sure to silence your cell phones. And if you have to take a phone call, please step out into the lobby to take that phone call. We don't want to participate in your phone call, and I don't want to have to charge you a $5 fee for that phone call. That's a little joke. Second of all, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over in a minute to Mr. Minter. The way that zoning hearings work is we have 3 different portions. We have our planning and zoning consent items, and unless someone has a concern about an item on the consent agenda, we will move all of the consent items at one point in time, or at one time, and then 14B will go into our DRC waiver requests and public hearings. The same way we do 14C, each item will be considered individually, and after the item is presented to the commission, we will give a moment for public comment for anyone who wants to speak regarding any of those items, and then it would come back to the board at that point for any information the applicant might need to share because of questions that were asked during public comment, or for any questions that the commission might have. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Minter. He'll have some information that he needs to share with the public as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As the chair said, our first item on the agenda are 6 items on the consent agenda. So when Mr. Martzoff reads off those 6 items in just a moment, if you have a question about any of those 6 items, raise your hand. We'll try to answer your question. If you're opposed to any of those 6 items, raise your hand, and that item will be pulled off of the consent agenda and will be considered individually, like the last portion of items today. Then we have a couple of items with our Development Review Committee appeal. Let's see, one of them relates to a request for a waiver from a sidewalk requirement, and the other one has to do with an on-site treatment system. Generally speaking, those matters are between the individual property owner or developer and the board. Usually we don't get into situations where surrounding property owners are interested in those items. And then we get into the main portion of the meeting today, which is our items for individual consideration. So we have some variety on that category. One of them is a reasonable accommodation request. This has to do with a request for a therapeutic animal within a residential area. And so generally speaking, the way we deal with those requests in this situation is we treat them pretty much the same as a special use permit. And what the board is considering is input from the surrounding property owners as to what effect, if any, you think the application has on your surrounding property. And then the question is whether or not the conditions that are proposed for the reasonable accommodation adequately address any of the issues raised by the surrounding property owners. We also have some large and small-scale plan amendments on today's agenda. Plan amendments are considered policy-making and legislative actions by the board. So the board has a large degree of discretion in considering plan amendments because they are legislative activities. But the small-scale application that's on today's agenda that has to do with Commonwealth Standard Development, 14C5, because that's a small-scale, small-size amendment, the board will actually act to adopt that today if that's their decision. On the other hand, we have a couple of large-scale amendments, one related to the McGinley property and the other related to Marion Gaming. For both of those large-scale amendment applications, the board's action today is not to adopt or deny, but rather the action is simply to vote whether or not they want to transmit those applications to the Department of Economic Opportunity and other state agencies to get their comments. And then once we have those comments transmitted to us, there'll be a subsequent adoption hearing date for those 2 items. It'll come back at a later date for adoption. So For the Marion Gaming and the McGinley property, there won't be an adoption action on those today. And now for both of those, there are also some related rezoning or zoning items. And while the board may consider those today, typically the board does not act on those zoning matters until the comprehensive plan amendment comes back to the board for final adoption. I encourage anyone who's here today, who's coming to speak, to provide the board with as much what I'll call site-specific factual information about whatever your issue is or concerns are, whether your issue is you think something is going to generate too much traffic, too much noise, you think it's inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. Try to give the board detailed information about what your concern is, rather than just saying, well, we don't like it, or I'm against it, because those kinds of statements of opinion legally don't have any effect on the board. You need to provide whatever your specific legal concern is for the board to act on that. Generally speaking, we'll have an applicant, we'll give them the opportunity to come to the podium first and have their representative make a general presentation outlining what their request is. Sometimes the applicant may want to simply wait and see what kind of opposition questions come up, and then we give the applicant the opportunity to have the last word to come up and answer any issues that are raised by the public. So keep in mind, if you're here in opposition to any of these applications, you have one opportunity to speak. And again, then the applicant, because they're the ones that have paid the money for the application and so forth, they get to come up and try to give answers to whatever your issues are, and then the board will deliberate. So once the public hearing is closed, the board's not going to take any more public comment after they close the public hearing, then they're just going to deliberate. I encourage all of you to try to stay on point and not give repetitive testimony. So if 2 or 3 people in front of you have already said what your concern was, if you want to just come up and say, I agree with what that person said, you can do that, but there's no need to keep saying the same objection over and over again if you've already heard an objection. Please keep an eye on the little lights on the podium. So it'll go from green to yellow and red, kind of like a traffic light. And when it gets to red, your time is out. It's time to wind up your comments. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mentor. So first up on our agenda today is our planning and zoning and would be our consent agenda.
Thank you. For the record, Sam Martzoff, Marion County Growth Services Director. The consent agenda consists of 6 items that are now up on the screen. So these items didn't receive any opposition. Staff recommended approval, and the Planning and Zoning Commission also recommended approval. I'm going to read them off, and if you have any of those items you want pulled or clarified, please raise your hand at the end. 14A1 is 19S06. It's a small-scale amendment. James and Catherine Taylor, David and Carolyn Wright, and Judy Sinkler. It's a land use change from rural land to medium-density residential. 14A2 is the second item, 1911-01 SU. It's Deanna Morrison Mitchell, and it's special use permit in R1. 14A3 is 1911-03Z Richard Roundtree. It's a rezoning from B4 to R1. 14A4 is 1911-04Z Timothy and Michonne Pointis, and it's a rezoning from A1 to R1. 14A5, the project engineer is requested to pull that item to clarify a couple of the conditions. It's baseline sand mine, 1911-05Z. 14A6 is 19L05. It's a large-scale amendment for Marion County text amendment, and it's this is the transmittal hearing for that item.
Thank you, Mr. Martzoff. Is there anyone in the audience who would like any of those items to be pulled? All right, with the exception of 14A5.
That's
Okay,
correct.
so I'll look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to move the consent with the exception of 14A5 for approval.
Second.
I have a motion for approval for the consent agenda with the exception of 14A5 by Commissioner Stone with a second by Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. So if you were here for items 14A1, 14A2, 14A3, 14A4, or 14A6, your item has been approved. Once again, you're welcome to stay with us for the remainder of the afternoon, or you may leave at this time. 14A5.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and start off then. 14A5 is 191105Z. It's a rezoning request. Rezoning request to homogenize this entire piece of property. You'll recall the board recently granted the frontage 300-foot depth for a PUD for commercial B5 uses, and it had some access plans associated with it. The rear of the property was has a special use permit sometime back for the sand mine operation, so they want to combine those into one PUD. There was 3 items in the conditions that the engineer wanted addressed, and I don't think staff had a problem with any of them, but I just heard them tonight, so I'd have to hear them again.
Okay. I see the applicant is here, Mr. Tillman.
Good afternoon, David Tillman, Tillman Associates Engineering, 1720 Southeast 16th Avenue, Building 100, Ocala, Florida, 34471. So what we did is we had copied over several the conditions from the special use permit over onto the overall PUD, and some of those conditions needed to be cleaned up, and we had brought this to their attention, but we did make the mistake of including all of these on the application that we had submitted in without pulling a few of them or modifying them. Condition number 1, it states that this is one that needs to be modified. It says that the site shall be developed and operated consistent with an approved major site plan that meets the requirements of the LDC as described in Division 5.5.4. I won't read all the text. And authorized by the county's Development Review Committee, a phasing plan for this extraction and reclamation shall also be included. And we wanted to add for the mining portion of this project, any request for waivers to the LDC may be regarded as a modification to this PUD. So we want the commercial portion that's going to be out front, and in the future, whenever we develop the back portion that's currently a sand mine under the M1 classification that still stands, we don't want that to be considered a modification to the PUD that has to come back in front of the board every time. But we understand that the conditions that were set forth in the special use permit for the sand mine would require us to come back in front of the board. So we're requesting that that modification be made there. I think on 12, we added, which is the water and sewer utilities are to be provided by Marion County Utilities.
That's
We added-
13, Mr. Tillman.
Okay, well, then we pulled one out somewhere in between theirs. That is Have you got a copy of the conditions that I can take a look at that staff has? Okay, thanks. Okay, number 8 was removed, and it was removed from, I thought, the submittal that we had made, which said the special use permit shall run with baseline sand mine. Any further sale of the property will nullify the special use permit. That's the reason we're pushing it over into the PUD, is because we will be selling the commercial portion across the front, and we wanted the special use permit, or in this case, the PUD, to remain intact for the sand mine on the back portion of the property, even if we subdivide the portion up front. And we already did subdivide it in between LLCs that have some partnership in between the commercial portion and the sand mine. And so that would nullify our special use permit if we did that division. And so therefore we were asking for number 8 to be removed, which means now number which is 13, which would change 13 to number 12. Water and sewer utilities, I think that got added if needed by staff. We wanted to make sure because sand mine doesn't have a need for utilities. So, but when we do come in with the PUD, the rest of the portion, we will be making those connections.
So I'm sorry. Claire, that's already one of the conditions in here.
Yes. And
Okay.
I'm fine with it. The text got added to it that said if needed, and it's on both copies, theirs and mine in this case. So, then 17, we added that it says there will be no additional signs or lighting for this project. We changed that to say there will be no additional signs or lighting for the sand mine, because of course the PUD portion we would like for there to be. This is missing, I think, another sheet of condition, another list of conditions. But then, unless y'all remove some more.
We may remove, let me look.
Okay.
David, I'm gonna give you this.
Okay, and number 22, the special use permit shall expire. Since this was we were converting over to a PUD, there wouldn't be an expiration date on it, so we felt like condition number 22 could be removed. And those are the only modifications that we saw as necessary to move this forward overall as a complete project with the commercial portion on the front.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Stone?
just pertaining to the last one, number 22 is actually number 18 for us.
Yes.
So I'm concerned if your list and our list are not syncing up.
There must have been a few more that were removed by staff that I don't have here. Let's see,
Okay. Well, Mr. Tillman, maybe staff can step forward and address that.
That's the current list.
okay. Okay, they do have the current list of 18, and the 22 that I had was, had a couple more that had been removed that I cannot tell you which ones they were right now unless I read through all of them. But, I mean, their list is consistent with keeping all of our buffers in place and everything, and we have no intentions of changing anything that we agreed to in the beginning. Other than the fact that we divided that for the front portion as commercial.
So then condition number 8 that is being removed, I think we need to have a quick discussion about that. I understand needing that to be removed for the front portion of the property,
Right.
but the back portion of the property where the sand mine actually is?
Right, and so if we finished mining and reclaiming a portion of that back, we would develop that as an industrial use. And if we did do that industrial, we would have to subdivide that property, and that's the reason we would like for that to be removed. If we want to change the way it's worded to any non-reclaimed portion of the sand mine that's under a sand mine activity, but you've got a condition in here that requires that the mining can only occur by that baseline sand mine LLC. So with that condition in here, it kind of holds us to the fact that no other entity can come in and take a piece of that sand mine and start mining it. It only applies to this one LLC.
Madam Chair?
Sure.
So what if there are new officers that come into Baseline Sand Mine that could actually change management and
could.
direction?
It has changed management. There were 10 members at one time, and I believe it's 3 members now at this point in time. But it's still the primary people that were heading it up are still in place. And that's one of the reasons with a special use permit that you do a special use permit in an LLC or corporation or entity's name is so that it can transfer, but all the conditions still stay the same.
Just if you can give some alternative language on number 8 to
Right.
keep us whole there.
Yes. All right.
All right. Commissioners, any other questions at this time?
Yeah, number 18. So we're saying the special use permit will never expire?
Basically, the special use permit goes away, and this is brought into the overall PUD.
Right.
Yeah, that's one of the languages
I
that
got
went
that.
away.
Okay.
I mean, what do you want to say for that? You want to say that the sand mine activity will be tied to,
Mr. Tillman, I'm going to give, if none of our commissioners have any other questions, I'm going to give you guys time to work on that while I open public comment.
Okay.
And then we'll come back. All right, commissioners, did you have any other questions or comments? All right, is there anyone in the audience who has any comments regarding this item? And you guys might have to work quick because I'm not quite sure there's going to be anybody here wanting to speak on this item.
Yeah, I don't think it has much opposition.
I mean, I think it may be resolved if you look at number 6, all mining operations shall be conducted by baseline sand
That's
mine
fine.
only.
Then just
That-
go ahead and remove 8, that's fine.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
thank you.
And 18?
And
18. And 18,
And 18.
Remove 18.
yeah.
And then we're fine with editing those few comments for the mining portion for the division, okay.
Right.
All right, any other questions or comments?
So moved. With those changes. Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Zalek with a second by Commissioner Moore for approval with the noted changes. Good, Madam Clerk? All right, any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. That's going to take us to our DRC waiver requests and public hearings, and the first item on the agenda is 14B1.
Right, Madam Chair, 14B1 is was a request to uphold DRC's denial regarding water and sewer connection requirement. This individual, the project engineer for this project, wishes to continue this to a date certain, which would be the December 17th meeting. 17th
Okay.
is right, isn't it? So I think if we could just get a motion to that, then.
I'll make a motion to continue 14B1 to December 1st meeting.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Stone with a second by Commissioner Moore to continue 14B1 to our December zoning meeting.
Yes, thank you. 14B2 is a.
Wait, any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Martzoff.
All right.
14B2.
14B2 is a request to uphold DRC's conditional approval regarding a waiver request for sidewalks and sidewalk fees for Sunset Harbor Baptist Church. This is a church that was established around 1996, as seen on the aerial there, and that's now used as a fellowship hall, and they wish to go ahead and formalize their larger sanctuary addition, and they've done a major site plan associated with that, which required that they install the sidewalks and or pay a fee in lieu of if approved by DRC. So DRC heard this item on July 29th and voted 5-0 to support the fee in lieu of. The applicant, however, wishes to a complete waiver of it, including the fee.
Okay.
In 2012, the church did a addition on there that required them to get a waiver, and they got a waiver to do a covenant in lieu of constructing, which was permitted at that time. But after 2013, we required either the construction or the fee in lieu of.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions?
Yeah, how much is the fee?
I think it's 450 feet of frontage. Yeah, I believe there's 450 feet of frontage.
But how much is dollar amount?
About $25 a foot.
So quite considerable for a church, yes.
And they can get their own estimate if they wish.
So that's over 10 grand.
Mr. Tillman?
That's about $11,000, doing the
Right.
math real quick. So, originally, we brought a site plan in that we turned in back in 2012, as Mr. Martzoff presented. They did give us the opportunity to do a covenant, which meant we would construct a sidewalk at the time that there was something to connect to on either side of this church. So the church put in a little bit, a grander plan than what they can afford. They've been trying to raise money now for 7 years to be able to build this church. They haven't been able to raise the money, so they came back to us and they said, we can only do something smaller. They're in a dilapidated building that is coming apart on them and in disrepair, and they can't raise the money to build a bigger facility, and now tacking on an $11,000 fee to them that they weren't anticipating when they moved forward with a smaller building to submit a new site plan. So they are asking that they be allowed to not build the sidewalk, not pay the fee up front, but to construct the sidewalk at a later time when there is sidewalk on Sunset Harbor Road to connect to. So it's to uphold an old approval and to pass that forward. And so we ask that since there isn't anything in that area, this church does serve the community with a food pantry, that they are a service to this neighborhood. So we would ask that you grant them this waiver.
Okay, Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Tillman? All right, is there anyone in the public who would like to speak regarding this item? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board for consideration.
Go ahead, sir.
Madam Chair, I'll move to go ahead and approve the waiver, having the church sign a new covenant for connectivity at a later date when it becomes available, when the sidewalk
sides.
becomes available.
Correct, second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Zalek with a second by Commissioner Gold. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. So if you're here with the church, you got the waiver and you don't have to pay the fee.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So just a quick clarification, can we continue that old practice of the covenant, or do we just need to have a developer's agreement?
We could, if you approve it, we can do a
Okay,
covenant.
I just
The
want to make sure.
covenant worked fine, but
I just wanted to make sure, because it's not something we practiced today.
yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
All right, that's going to take us into item 14C, our planning and zoning items for individual consideration. First up is 14C1.
All right. 14C1 is the reasonable accommodation item on the agenda today. It's 191111 RA, and it's the staff's recommending approval with conditions for the reasonable accommodation of the Fair Housing Act to allow the keeping of one miniature pig in R1 zoning. This is in Marion Oaks. The single-family, we obtained a letter from the psychotherapist indicating the tenant's daughter, who resides on the property, uses this pig for therapeutic purposes. The miniature pig is primarily an indoor pet and uses the backyard under supervision. We wrote conditions that would require that obviously the special use permit would run with the tenant and the tenant's guardian, and also run with the pig itself. If the pig's removed for any reason from the subject property, the special use permit would go away.
Okay. All right, well, would the applicant like to address the commission?
Yeah, my name's Albert Spangler. I am the tenant there. The address is 8413 136 Loop, Ocala, Florida 34473. I got the pig from my daughter because she has disability, anxiety, depression, and the pig helps tremendously. She's had problems throughout school. We've had the pig now for about 2 years, and the pig helps her tremendously. In fact, it helps so much that she don't have to have the medication anymore. It helped her with that. She does do counseling. She still has the counseling, but not as often as she used to. So it's been really therapeutic for her. It has taken her mind off of a lot of, it gives her more of a grasp, I guess, something to have to take care of, or something that demands her attention, rather than sitting back and, thinking or dwelling on other problems or whatever, letting things get her down. It keeps her up and going. And myself, I'm amazed at what it has done for her. The pig, it's an indoor pig. It's not any bigger. Some dogs are bigger than most of the dogs are bigger than what he is. He's scared to death of other animals. He goes out in the yard, does his business. He does this like a dog. He goes to the door when he wants to go out, and when he's done, he comes right back to the door. He don't like being outside. I mean, he don't like the cold weather. He don't like rain. He don't even like getting dirty. It's funny. I mean, you wouldn't think him for a pig, but he's totally different, and he got a mind of his own. But he's well behaved. He listens. You can call him. He'll come to you. He he loves to be with people. I'll sit on the floor and he'll come up and lay right across my legs and just loves to be petted. He don't bother anybody. In fact, I don't think most of the people in the neighborhood don't even know we have one. But, he has been a tremendous help to my daughter, and I just like to put that out.
Thank you,
Okay,
and
thank you.
thank you for your testimony, Mr. Spangler, and I love his name. That's super cute. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant? No.
Is the yard totally fenced? I couldn't see from
It
the
looks
one-
like it is from the pictures, the backyard. Yeah, there's white vinyl privacy fencing.
I saw the one angle, I just
Yeah.
couldn't tell. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak regarding this item? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for consideration.
I'll move for approval.
I have a motion by Commissioner Moore with a second by Commissioner Gold for approval. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Go enjoy Crispy.
Bacon?
That was his name.
That's the name.
That's the name of the pig. Super cute.
Thought it was bacon.
All right, that's going to take us to item 14C2 on our agenda.
Chris Rise with the Growth Services Department. Our first item is a comprehensive plan amendment. It's a large-scale amendment. This is the transmittal public hearing, so this will be whether or not the board sends it to the state agency reviews for that process. That will take approximately 30 to 45 days and then return back. And then will then go for a final adoption consideration at that point in time. Tentatively, we've looked at February and maybe January. It will depend on timing and agenda scheduling, for instance. Again, this is a comprehensive plan amendment. Staff is recommending approval of the applicant's request. The property is the McGinley property on the north side of Highway 484. They're requesting to go from a combination of high residential, urban residential, and employment center to a full employment center designation for their holdings. They own all of the out parcel within Marion Oaks on the north side of Highway 44, with the exception of a small piece that belongs to SECO, where they are looking at having their electric substation for the region in the area. Again, staff is recommending approval of that request, and it will also include an updating of the regional activity center policy that relates to the McGinley property to reflect changes in the land use designations and the uses potential for that area. Companion to this is a rezoning case. However, that case will not be considered at this point in time as it's dependent on the comprehensive plan amendment. However, it will come back with the considerations when the plan amendment is considered for adoption. At this point, I'll look for questions.
Very good. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff? All right. Thank you, Chris. Mr. Tillman?
Good afternoon, David Tillman again, same address. So at the planning and zoning hearing, I only had one gentleman that came up and he had questions. He didn't have any opposition, so I'll keep it very short. I mean, this is something that I guess y'all probably anticipated whenever we did all the changes on the south parcel. So we're just trying to move it forward. The concept plan that you see in the PUD application kind of spells out what we're doing. The gentleman that was here was concerned about what was going to be adjacent to his home, and I showed him that it falls within the single-family residential area, would be adjacent to him, and so he was satisfied with that. His only comment when he got up was, what are we going to do with all these cars? And, I pointed out we are four-laning 484 right now in this section, and 49th is coming very quickly behind it. So there will be additional transportation, and we're doing concurrency traffic studies in portions as we move these projects forward. So we will be either required to show that we meet those concurrencies at the time that we bring in the plans, or we will, not be approved. So I'll sit back if there's any additional questions, try to answer those unless you have some specific.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Tillman?
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tillman. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak regarding this item? 14C2. All right. At this point, I'll bring it back to the board.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Commissioner Gold with a second by Commissioner Moore to approve the transmittal. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Mr. Risen?
Our next item is item number 14C3, which is a rezoning for 1911 10Z. This is the McGinley South Commerce Park, which is currently an existing PUD. The request is to actually go ahead and add some additional acreage to it, which was acquired by the property owner, which is approximately 2.5 acres in the southwest corner, and then update some provisions regarding the buffering for the project, and then also qualifying on the uses for the project that were noted on the master plan, that although that may have been an oversight on the original original concept that was submitted. Staff is recommending approval of the overall PUD with some development conditions. We do have a concern regarding the modification of the exterior buffer on the west and south. The applicant has proposed reducing or eliminating the additional tree requirements that were originally required, and staff is not supporting and not recommending that. In terms of Southwest 49th Avenue, the applicant has proposed to go back to a standard C-type buffer or provide an alternative design, which would include a berm and just shade trees. Staff is in support of that activity, however, for that request. Should any more buffering be required or landscaping be looked at in 49th Avenue, the county actually can look at coordinating that with our tree funds that we have in particular, and potentially work that in with Southwest 49th Avenue, particularly on the east side of that roadway where we would back up to Marion Oaks, for instance. They are also proposing to modify the internal roadway buffer to provide a stylized design at the corners. Staff is recommending approval of that with an allowance that they can do shade trees or understory trees, depending upon which method is elected by those individual lots as they come through the development process. And again, the concern is the revised, or the concept plan which was submitted with this application had left an old statement from the original. We think it was an oversight, but we wanted to qualify that this would be allowing the B4 or the B5 uses, and then lower level uses, if they were just lower level, they wouldn't need special use permits for this area because this is the critical area with the economic grant that the county has.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Risen. Mr. Tillman?
Good afternoon, David Tillman, Tillman Associates Engineering. So everything that he said is we agree with, other than our concern is with not allowing any of the B2 and B4 uses. The reason we wanted to allow some of those is we do anticipate that there will be some restaurant uses that will occur on the south side in that top 300 to 600 feet of the site. There, you know, we planned on putting a frontage road in there, and we feel like that would be a positive thing to have in that area because we are going to capture a lot of our trips. When people leave for lunch, you know, we don't want them to have to necessarily leave the property. We would like for there to be some type of food services within that area to be able to serve those industrial, that industrial park as a whole. So we do anticipate that there'll be some of that. There also would potentially be some offices associated with it and support businesses that would not necessarily qualify as B5. And so we intentionally wanted those uses to be included as well. The other thing with all the landscape changes, Commissioner Stone, I know you met with one of the people that's been bringing potential users here. They made the statements, they're the ones that brought forth these alternates. And we're proposing them only as alternates. We don't want to replace because my concern is that some of the costs for doing berming and something of that nature would be more costly than doing the other type of buffering that was proposed in here. And then on the interior road, you know, the statement was made that there generally is no landscaping that occurs. Now, I don't necessarily think that that's the case. I would like to, that's the reason I proposed doing the clustering as a substitution than no landscaping, because I think that we still want to see something in the park that dresses it up as you come through that main roadway. So that's why we proposed the clustering. We felt like that was appropriate and would still give something to, you know, change the look of just a straight, solid industrial look down that boulevard. But if you've got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, but I hope that y'all will approve this today.
And Mr. Tillman, you are proposing changes with the landscaping and buffering requirements on the south and west side?
These were all, yes, these were all to meet the request of the developer that's bringing users in forward, but that is correct.
Well, I would like to have you pull that up, please, Chris. I would like to see aerials of that area. I mean, those bufferings were originally put in to protect the property owners that are there.
And they're
Existing
on
property
the
owners or
on the
any
south-
existing homes.
On the south and the north side, or excuse me, the south and the west side, they're not a huge number of property owners there. And keep in mind, his substitution there is a 6-foot berm with trees as the alternate for that area. So it still has something in place to block that view and create some separation on those sides. And then, of course, on 49th, there will be that 60-foot wide gap that you have in between your 49th right-of-way that I imagine a lot of those trees will remain in place and whenever y'all do the development of that roadway, will create a buffer in between the property and there.
Right, and I'm not as concerned about that one as I am, what the south and the west side looks like. So could we get some aerials of those, please?
Are you looking for the aerial of what is existing there right now?
Yes.
Okay.
This is the current area aerial.
We don't see it.
Yeah,
It's
there we go.
coming.
Can you
It's
zoom
coming.
in to how
Yeah, I'm
houses
gonna-
are actually there?
Not coming.
Oops, rats, I didn't. Some of my pictures. For instance, let's get down in this area.
I'm gonna laugh if I can pull it up quicker than you guys can.
There we go.
We see, so we primarily I see one house along the south property line,
Okay,
and then we've got the water plant, and then when you look at the west property line, we've got two in this region. If you pan down a little bit more, I don't know if we have any more to, I think there is another, and there's one more to the north. Two, so we basically got just, there are very, very few property owners, and we're creating that, putting that berm in place or the landscape requirement, one of the two, so.
okay, so Mr. Tillman
Berman, not typical.
and board members, getting this right is very important for the existing residential property owners there. So what I would prefer to see is I can agree to what you're asking for. Where there are not already existing residences, maybe we could have, as part of this condition, where we do have those few existing residences, if we're doing the buffer, that we are providing them with some extra landscape buffering, such as maybe
Why
some
don't we say-
trees.
Why don't we just say a continuous hedge would be required under either buffer criteria where existing homes are, where the existing homes are located? That way, because you've already got the trees still with the berm. There are fewer trees, but it's one every 50 feet, I believe. But that continuous hedge will create on top of that 6-foot berm. They'll grow to at least 6 feet, so you'll have a 12-foot wall, basically, of land or vegetation in between the two. And that should provide pretty substantial buffering for the neighbors. And if we just put that where it's adjacent to existing homes.
I can agree to that. Commissioners, Commissioner Stone?
Mr. Tillman, are they gonna berm that area entirely, or is it gonna be done in phases?
It will be done in phases. It'll be done as construction occurs and somebody moves in to build something. So the first user that is purchasing isn't even gonna be adjacent to that south or west boundary. So it's just gonna be pieced
Okay.
as we go.
And if I
Commissioners?
can qualify, just to be sure, for that south and west boundaries, then what we're gonna say is that against residences that are existing, they'll have both a berm and the topped with the hedgerow.
But you can just say anywhere adjacent to existing homes, a full hedgerow will be required. And then that way, it doesn't matter which buffer we do, because one of them already has it, the other one doesn't, but it'll be added on the ones that don't have it.
Commissioner, one question.
I was
Would
gonna
that
say-
be existing at the time of construction or as of today?
Existing, well,
That's up to y'all.
Yeah, it should be at time of
it
construction.
should be at the time of construction, because if anybody moves in there and,
Exactly.
yeah.
Right.
After that,
Probably not
it's
gonna be that
there.
many.
Yeah, after that,
They
it's
will-
already there. They know it's there when they move in.
That's correct.
And for your reference, up on the screen, I do have, you'll notice, this is the buffer typical that was provided with the conceptual plan for that south and west side. It does not have actual a berm variation in it at this point in time, so this would be in addition to that. This buffer is the buffer here, was the alternative buffer along 49th Avenue, in lieu of this buffer, which is our standard C-type buffer. So the
And
proposal.
that was added as an alternate based on the request from Project Farmer, just so you know.
So I'd like to make sure that we give them the alternate option as well, because that gives them that flexibility.
And we're agreeing then that, is this the one for the?
This is the south and west.
Yep, the south and west, we will, can we change that one, the one that says Southwest 49th Avenue? We'll say that to be the south and west as well, and then that way that covers everything.
And I will note that this alternative design with the berms requires 2 shade trees, whereas the ordinary buffer that was being required along the south and west required 4 shade trees.
And you're gonna do clustering inside the park?
Clustering inside the park.
Okay. But 49th Street is still gonna remain extensively buffered, right?
That's these alternative designs here. What occurs is this is their proposal for their primary alternative,
On
which is
49th?
2 shade trees on 49th and a berm for 6 foot high. And then they can also revert to the standard type C buffer that we have along old roadways.
Okay. For clarification, Chris, would the alternative buffer that they're recommending be to the west of 49th, and then we will keep our 60-foot right-of-way on the east of 49th?
That's correct.
Okay.
But that's where you want that's where you want the most buffer, is on the east side.
I know,
It's from the industrial spot,
but that's us on the east side
on the east side.
of
Correct.
the
But not-
property.
But this is the west
Yeah,
side.
this is the west side, so that's why I'm
That's
like,
what
I'm
you want
okay
all.
with that.
But the picture you are looking at, this will be on the west side of 49th Avenue, between
Yeah.
the road and the park.
Right.
And then
And
the
then we have
south
the
side and the
road.
west side of the property as a whole, it will be this alternative plus the continuous hedge where you have existing improvement,
Correct.
existing
Yeah, but
houses.
that berm with that is
Clustering.
nothing like what they've done up on by FedEx. Nothing like it.
You don't like it?
No, it's not. I mean,
He doesn't think there's a whole lot to
there's
it.
there's nothing to that. I mean, maybe if you put a hedge on top of it.
This is the direct request of the.
Well, I understand it, but still, at the end of the day, that's on a major roadway. It's going to be a huge part of our community, and we want it to look nice. We spent another $250,000 because the first industrial park up there didn't do it right.
But that,
You know.
I mean, that's gonna be a berm, it will be all vegetated, and it will have trees on it.
You think it'll be but how
It's
far
a
apart is it?
On the west side of the road, it will be 2 trees per,
And then don't forget, we've got 60 feet
100
on the
feet.
east
worried
side,
about
which we're
that.
not
I'm worried
even
about the-
getting into that.
he's worried about the west side of the road.
Right.
I'm worried about the east side. We're not impacting the east side.
Yeah.
I would make one notation for that south and west boundary. This alternative design, like as I noted, just has 2 trees per 100 linear feet. Normally, those south boundaries were going to be needing 4 trees per 100 linear feet. I would recommend, as a staff member, that at least be continued, because that will be residential neighborhoods in the future adjoining these larger industrial park sites. And they have had one of the approvals that the commission did grant previously was to reduce the shading tree requirements on those properties, which was where the more intense tree requirements had been made with the prior approval.
Well, we didn't have a problem pulling them out of the park itself internally, but on the outside,
I would
We
just
should keep-
caution us as to what we're working with and what's being proposed. I'm going to support what's being proposed today.
Correct.
And keep in mind that there's 20-year-old pine trees and cedar trees that run the perimeter of this property.
Right.
Unless y'all cut them down whenever y'all put the right-of-way in there and you modify that buffer, and there's a significant buffer already existing in
Exactly.
between.
Commissioner Zalek?
Two trees per 100 feet, and if we plant the right trees, I think it's gonna provide very good
you think it'll be all right?
scenery. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Any other questions or
If we want to
comments?
plant more trees, we'll plant more trees later.
Exactly.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
What about the only other
I gotta
question
do
I have,
public.
Madam Chair, is we had talked before about the, and this might not be the right spot for it, but when AutoZone got done, there was no, I don't know that there was any kind of standard, and the building ended up looking much
Oh.
Nicer?
less nice than Chewy and FedEx
They
and all the other
chose not
stuff.
to paint.
And so I don't, but I think in this PUD somewhere there needs to be something that can't be just a painted building, or I don't know what they did, but it ended up turning out pretty bad.
It's raw concrete, that
Yeah.
structure is.
And that actually is one of the conditions that we are retaining. It's in condition number 10 that points out all buildings will be painted so as to present and maintain a finished appearance rather than a standard unfinished concrete appearance.
Okay.
You good?
And we discussed this before, and they agreed to it.
Okay. Yeah, because they can end up looking really decent, or they can,
Which I understand AutoZone now is coming back.
they're probably gonna have to come back, but still, I
It'll
mean,
cost them more money,
they ended
but-
up not doing anything architecturally at the outside, at least at some level, and it looks much worse than the rest of what the other companies came to our community and put in.
Well, they're fixing it, so.
they're fixing
And
it.
we've got a condition in here regarding that, so
Yep,
I think that we don't have to worry about that on this
Will those come
project.
back, will those come back as a master plan, or will they be approved at any level of building, or?
There won't be an architectural review for it. I mean, the
No.
master plan does have to come back in front of you, but at that point in time, we won't have all of the,
Okay.
finishes for the structures that'll be built.
Okay,
And with this approval, we have allowed for breaking up the site to separate plans. So there may not be a master plan. There might be site plans for certain portions, or plats for certain portions,
That makes more
or
sense.
master plans for certain portions.
Right.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions or comments? All right. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for consideration.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve it as it's presented.
Second.
I have a motion to approve as presented by Commissioner Stone with a second by Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. All right, that's going to bring us up to item 14C4.
Before we go into that, I've got a comment.
Commissioner Moore?
Yeah, I've got to make a comment.
Oh, why don't we wait until we get to where we're going to take action on this?
Okay.
Please.
I just want to make sure. I
Yeah,
do
that's
legal-
fine.
stay
All right.
legal on this one.
Ken Wayrock, Grow Services. Just a second, IT had to fix something real quick.
Okay.
I think they're done. Maybe, maybe not. So this is a 19L06, and it has a companion of 191106Z. The large-scale land use amendment is heard for transmittal today. And the request is from rural land to commercial on 65.72 acres, and it's on South 301 where Oxford Downs is. A brief history of the site. In April 2010, the site requested a rezoning from A1 to A2, and staff recommended denial, and the board approved it. And there was a companion special use permit for a horse track in A2. And again, staff recommended denial, and the board approved it. And then 8 months later, the same applicant came back and asked for a special use permit for a 26,000 square foot building for a card room, retail and restaurant accessory use to the horse track. And again, staff recommended denial, and the board approved it. So this is the current future land use of the area. To the south in Sumter County, it is ag. It matches our rural land, 1 unit to 10 acres. And here's the proposed with the commercial. And then if you do a comparison to include the city of Wildwood, which is annexed fairly far north, but a mile away on CR 202, CR 104, that is where they have neighborhood commercial and some low-density residential at that intersection. And the intersection of Highway 42 is also over a mile away to the north. And the main commercial nodes for the area would be CR 466 to the south, over 2 miles away, and potentially at 42 if that ever developed. So currently, with the development allowed under the current land use, they're allowed 6 residential units, 0 commercial, but they have this special use permit that allows the activities today. And under proposed commercial, they could have up to 525 units and 2.8 million square foot of commercial as the maximum development. The analysis is that it's not consistent with the surrounding area or the surrounding land uses. It's inconsistent with the comprehensive plan and encourages sprawl. 301 is a commuter route and a principal arterial, which is intended to serve separate urban areas to move traffic from one place to another. And staff believes that granting this amendment would adversely affect the public interest. Staff is recommending the denial, planning and zoning is recommended denial, and we've had one letter out of the 3 surrounding property owners says opposition.
Okay. Commissioner Moore?
Well, question, because you were at the regional planning with me when East Central Florida, and I believe Commissioner Gold was there, but the person from Wildwood mentioned that they're going to be annexing to the north. So I understand what you showed as current, but according to the Wildwood, and when I talked to the individual afterwards, I guess they're looking to, because the village is Wildwood.
So-
Anyway, but they're going to be going further north, which means that area that's still ag there, they have plans to someday annex it and probably change it.
That may be, but I emailed that planner.
Okay,
And in the northernmost part of the city, it's currently R1, R2, C2, C3, which is what is shown. And he told me they have no corridor plans, and except for potentially a gateway corridor for the area.
okay, Gateway Quarter, that's what you mentioned.
For and that was only they've discussed designating it as a gateway, but no actual plans or any movement.
Okay, because I was under, the impression I got when I talked to them afterwards was that they were gonna come right up to our county border basically someday. And
Well, they will.
are.
I
Yeah,
mean, we know
will.
they will. And we also know that that entire corridor at one point being a 4-lane highway, and with all of the growth that you see in the villages and in Wildwood, that's probably going to turn into a commercial corridor
Right,
eventually.
exactly.
One day, but not today.
Yeah, but I mean, we gotta look for the future, this has future land use.
So, Commissioners, any other comments or questions for staff?
Can you put up the current zoning map?
Zoning?
Current zoning.
Yeah.
Because I just, what is the B2 and
So.
stuff that's next to it, or a couple properties away from it?
So that is historical stuff that has been commercial. So when zoning came into play, they labeled it the different types of commercial zoning that met what the use that was going on on that site.
Right, so today it's B2, R1, there's some B5 in there. Just trying to, can you put the current zoning up
Yep.
so we can blow it up and see it?
The map?
You're talking about
Yeah,
this here.
this stuff, yeah.
And that's just all historic,
But it is B2, right?
right, with rural land use.
A rural land use with
B2 zoning.
not the matching, so it doesn't have matching land use?
Correct.
Why didn't we take care of that when we went
So,
through and
back-
updated all that?
So, back when Mr. Tillman, before
you can
they
see-
submitted, and we talked to a guy, there was, back in the early 90s, the board had a discussion, and it was, it was still rural. Their intention was to still keep it rural, but that's before the villages was up against it. That's before any of this. I mean, right up here, you drive down there, I drove down there a few days ago, there's a soccer place, there's churches, there's commercial uses all up and down 301. So, and probably instead of considering this particular thing in isolation, what we should do and go back and do, even if it takes us another 60 days to do, is actually have our staff develop a new one with our guidance that says, hey, we understand this is gonna be a commercial corridor. Probably 200 feet on each side needs to be land use in some type of small neighborhood commercial, and then let them change as they move on. At least to bring everything into alignment.
Right.
Because there's no way that you're gonna come back and take these business uses out of here. And there's no way you're gonna stop business from happening on 301 and 42 to our county line.
Right.
Right? I mean, you goes down south, there's a Wawa, there's another shopping center just south of it. I mean, the entire corridor has changed in the last 20 years, significantly. And so to match it up, because I think people have some legitimate concerns. In order to match all those things up, we need to take the corridor into perspective instead of just probably one
Piecemealing it.
one
Yes,
piece.
exactly.
Well, and I believe we can still do that, because today the only action that we're taking is transmitting this.
But I
for-
would even maybe, based on, and I don't know what Mr. Minter, maybe get a little advice from him, but I would even hold up on transmittal and transmit the corridor. Just come back in 60 days, 90 days, transmit the entire corridor as our plan instead of doing a piecemeal transmittal.
Okay,
Just a thought, Mr. Minter probably needs to weigh in.
okay. We'll have Mr. Minter weigh in just a few moments, let you think about that for a few minutes. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for staff? No.
I I'll just say I rode down there and all I see is agriculture all around there. So,
On
today.
On 301.
301, where they are. Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of vacant, open land right there.
It's
It
kind,
isn't,
even the farm store in front of it
yeah,
doesn't
it's
sell the stuff
deceiving
from there.
right now. Yeah, it's kind of deceiving.
I'm
It
just
used to
thinking
be.
back on a project that I wasn't here for transmittal on, and this says shadowing of that.
No, not at all.
Well, it does
No,
to
there's
me.
infrastructure in place, there's road infrastructure, there's water and sewer infrastructure, you've got a 4-lane corridor. It's completely different.
You got 80,000 people
Yes,
next
right
door in the
there.
villages.
Yes.
Yeah, it's completely
Actually,
different.
110,000.
I'm not gonna debate
I
topic
I'll
because
respectfully disagree with you on this one.
I'll just say Walmart is less than 5 minutes away on the other road
But it's a 2-lane road and it has no infrastructure in place.
with
totally
4-lane
different
highway,
projects.
right-of-way
Two different
purchase.
projects.
Yeah, but
All
it
the
hasn't
sa-
been done.
It's a shadowing.
No, I think
In
that's
my
a
opinion.
stretch.
Shadow. It's a long shadow.
Very, very far, mile away shadow. Mr. Tillman?
Hello, David Tillman, Tillman Associates Engineering. I would agree with most of the commissioners that this is an urbanized area that's growing more and more in urbanization as we speak. If you look, we're one parcel away from being adjacent to the city of Wildwood. The one parcel that it separates us belongs to Larry Brown, who is a partner in this project. So he has a commercial venture on that agricultural piece of property. It's called a produce stand, but I challenge you to go inside of it and see it as a produce stand. There's quite a bit of retail. There's a lot of retail that goes on in there. So this area already is commercial, and this is already a commercial piece of property. The infrastructure was required to be put in place back in the day when the special use permit came in, with anticipation, I believe, of additional commercial growth within this region. So it was directed that way back at that time to anticipate more commercial growth up and down this corridor. I know there is some opposition. I will try to address any of their comments whenever I come back and speak. If there's anything else I can add, though, that y'all, or any questions that you have at this time.
Okay.
I do have one question.
Commissioner
As Commissioner
Gold.
Zalek stated to wait until it's all ready to go, would that put you behind?
I would certainly prefer to move it forward at this point in time. I did speak with Mr. Ron Brown, who owns the parcel in front of us, and Mr. Brown actually wants to come in as commercial as well. He told me he was disappointed in me in not calling him because I have represented him before, and he said, "You knew that I wanted to do this as commercial. Why didn't you bring me in at the exact same time?" So I think some of it will follow immediately after we do this transmittal. There will be additional applications.
All right.
So.
Okay. I do have one person who's signed up to speak regarding this item, Darren Smith.
Hi, everybody. I'm here to read a letter from my father, who is past president of the Marion County Cattlemen's Association. He's a member of the Marion County Hall of Fame, Agriculture, and he's also Farm Credit Farmer Rancher of the Year, state of Florida. And I gotta say, I'm pretty glad he's not here to hear what we're hearing today.
Mr. Smith, can you give your name and address for the record, please?
Darren Smith, 16701 Southeast 122nd Terrace, Wearsdale, Florida.
Thank you.
And I'll just read what he's written. My name is Frank Smith, and I am the third of 5 generations to reside at the corner of 177th and Southeast 58th Avenue. I do not usually object to things my neighbors want to do with their land, and to be exact, this is the first time in 76 years. A few years back, the same petitioners moved into the neighborhood under the pretense of building a horse racing facility. I wasn't overjoyed, but being somewhat related to agriculture, I again registered no complaint. The truth is, they were only after a gaming license that would allow them off-track betting and the operation of a poker room. It was plain from the start that they were only playing to the thousands of retirees in the villages, and gambling seems to fill a void in their life. The zoning change proposed today would take in at least most of the racetrack, to allow travel trailer park, the most densely populated zoning you can request, is totally incompatible with our agriculture zoned area. And I would strongly encourage the board to reject and deny the change. Sincerely, Frank W. Smith. Thank you. And
Thank you,
I know I
Mr.
went
Smith.
over.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak regarding this item?
Andrew Lannon, I'm the one that sent you the unabridged dictionary the other day. I won't speak about the memo that I sent you in opposition, but now we've heard from two of the three landowners. I represent Horsepower USA LLC. My name is Andrew Lannon, 1000 Legion Place, Orlando, Florida, 32801. Horsepower USA LLC owns the land directly to the left. You just heard from the neighboring property owners to the north. So two of the three property owners object. Commissioner Zalek's idea is great. I think it's a fantastic idea to work with the Growth Management Department to figure out to do a corridor study to figure out how to get commercial into this area, because 301 is a 4-lane road and there is opportunity here for commercial development. However, having a J track where people can get hurt, having a 220 RV park right next to my client's property where they've already intruded into my client's property with their racetrack, and all of the game room and all the other things that it brought to the property have caused not only that neighbor, but also my client to be very miffed with this property owner. And they haven't been done right by Marion County. And so in addition to the opportunity that was presented by Commissioner Zalek talking about doing a study regarding commercial feasibility and taking time to do that, one other option I don't know if you've looked at as a county commission is you're right on the border of Sumter County. This is DeSantis and Trump country. Have you ever thought about a thoroughbred fairgrounds here, like a horse racing complex? You could do a public-private partnership. You could have a regional asset here. There are 3 tracks in the country right now that are owned by state governments. Saratoga Racecourse in New York, the Del Mar Racecourse in California, and the Monmouth Park Racecourse in New Jersey. They are all very successful, and Marion County is the horse capital of the world. You could have a quality facility right here, right in that piece.
Where do you live, sir?
Orlando.
Okay, thank you.
That's what he said.
I thought we'd go World Equestrian Center and a bunch of other places.
Yes, sir.
You said anyone.
Go ahead.
Harvey Vandeven, 1736 Southeast 47th Avenue, Ocala, Florida. I'm in support of this request. I think an RV park would be a good fit for the poker room as well as the overall area. I own some property down the street on 301 that's commercial, and I've noticed over the years there's more and more coming there, and there's also plenty of for sale signs that indicate more growth. So this is a way of planning for this area, and I know that there's always change is always going to be met with uneasiness, but in the long haul, that by putting the poker room there and building a water plant and putting everything there, we've opened the door, and it just seems like it makes sense to make the thing a nicer place and make it have more access. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vandeven. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, bring it back to the board, and well, hold on, Commissioner Moore. Mr. Tillman, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, I mean, I would bring the point forward that whenever we did put in the sewer on this roadway, we were required to upsize it 2 sizes larger than what was necessary for us. Actually, it was more than 2 sizes, but the minimum size y'all allows a 4-inch, but we were required to go past a 6 all the way up to an 8, anticipating future growth on this corridor for connectivity. So that was the direction that we were headed, was future growth on this corridor. I would like to point out that Horsepower USA also approached this owner to do a partnership on this site and move their corporate headquarters to that location. So their intentions were to make that area a commercial location for their corporate headquarters at that point in time. So I don't see this being something that is going to diminish the value of their property in any way. To me, this is kind of headed to the direction of what they were planning on doing with their property in the first place that was presented to the owner of this property. So,
Okay, please come.
My name is Ken Schneider, 5001 Southwest 20th Street. I was the gentleman who approached Mr. Tillman. I work in the horse racing industry for 52 years. I'm a trainer by profession. I started off getting a trainer's license when I was 19 years old. I work in the management end of the horse racing industry. I was a senior executive with Magna Entertainment, reporting to Frank Stronach. I was an executive director of a major breeding organization, and I was a senior executive and consultant for the Racing Commission of the state of Michigan. What Mr. Tillman said is not correct. We were interested in entering into an agreement with the current owners of Oxford Downs to expand their racing and to make their quarter horse racetrack into a full racing facility that would bring credibility to the horse racing industry. This is not the type of facility that we were interested in doing. We have no interest in getting involved in this kind of half-assed baked arrangement that they're trying to do. This is not horse racing. This is not amateur horse racing. It doesn't even race to that level. So I'm sorry, that's not exactly the case that we were trying to do. We're trying to do something that would take a black eye for the horse racing industry in this county and bring it back to where it belongs, at something that would be very credible. If you see right in the state emblem right there, you've got horses in there. This is the horse capital of the world. It's not a place where it should be having a second-rate or a third-rate or fourth-rate operation. I'm sorry. That's not exactly what, when I approached Mr. Tillman, that I had in mind.
Anything else,
Thank you.
Mr. Schneider?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Commissioners, do you have any other questions or comments for the applicant at this time? Okay, Commissioner Moore, I believe you have a statement you'd like to read?
I've got a statement that I'd like to or not, I've got to read. I had a conversation with Mr. Tillman. At the time, I was only aware of half of this, because part is legislative, part is quasi-judicial. So let me read this. Disclosure regarding ex parte communication received. This relates to agenda items 14C4, which is legislative. I was unaware at the time of the 14C4A, which is related respectively to the application of number 19L-06 for large-scale comprehensive amendment and to the application for the 191106Z rezoning, which I was unaware of. For the applicant, Marion Gaming Management, LLC. Last week, I had a phone conversation with the applicant's representative concerning this project. At the time, I was thinking only of the comprehensive plan amendment and thought it was an appropriate conversation. After the phone call, actually, a gentleman sitting right next to me, we were driving back from regional planning, let me know about the other portion. And after the call, however, I realized that it was a concurrent zoning request for this project, which is quasi-judicial, as to which commissioners should not be taking comments outside the public hearing. Therefore, before the board begins consideration of these items, I want to place on record the nature of this communication I had, so that that if any member of the public wishes to respond to the substance of that communication, you will have opportunity to do so in today's meeting. Basically, our conversation was all about the comp plan, and I had even mentioned about my conversations with both Sumter County and with City of Wildwood just prior at the regional planning. I had talked to them about trying to make that corridor all, basically make our comp plan and their comp plan match. And that's why I relayed to Mr. Tillman. And Mr. Tillman, you were the other end of that. If you remember anything else that was on there that should be disclosed, but that, it was all comp plan, if I remember correctly.
That's correct. The zoning was not brought up in any way. It was only
Yeah,
discussion regarding the
I didn't know
land
till I
use.
hung up and, gentleman that's driving says, hey, there's a zoning portion. I was like, oh, crud, I didn't know that, so.
But there was no conversation regarding the zoning item at all.
Okay, so anyway, and then if I may, I'll just say, as far as everybody knows me, I'm 100% anti-gambling to the hilt. So I want to vote on these in two separate parts, because I don't want to vote the zoning with the transmittal, because I do think we should get the entire corridor, like Commissioner Zalek said. It needs to match, and we need to look at our neighbors to the south, and we need to coordinate with our neighbors to the south. We need something that works for the entire corridor. So on the transmittal portion, I see that totally different than the zoning portion. The zoning portion, I agree. It's totally horrendous to call that a quarter horse track. We need something better. You know, and I don't like gambling, period. But, you know, if you're going to do horse racing, you need to do horse racing. You don't need to just have it as an excuse for a card room.
Commissioner, if I'm saying the wrong thing, please correct me, staff, but I believe today the only thing that we would be voting on would be the transmittal, not the zoning.
Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
So then that other portion doesn't apply?
Not
Okay.
today.
Okay. Okay.
It applies in the overall,
But
Not
we're not
today.
voting on it today.
all
So-
we're voting on is transmitting it.
Yeah, we are not giving approval for the zoning at
Yes
this
or no?
time, just the
Gotcha.
transmittal.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure we're clear that, yeah, if, I agree with redoing the corridor and making the corridor a whole and a good idea for the corridor, but I do not agree with the other side. And I will never vote for expansion of gambling in Marion County, just straight up tell you that.
Okay, I think we got
Okay,
it.
got it, okay.
Mr. Tillman or staff, do you have anything else to say before the board goes into some consideration and has discussion? All right, great. All right. Commissioner Zalek, I think you bring up a very valid point.
We can, Commissioner, we can transmit and then bring back and we can do it either way. I would like to get Guy's opinion. You know, I think in 30 days, we could also have our staff put together how the corridor should line up. There's already existing zonings, and quite frankly, probably on both sides of 301.
Right.
The land use should, for 200 feet on each side, should be commercial, in my opinion.
At least.
Neighborhood business. That would kind of fix the corridor issue. And then, you know, and Commissioner Moore, I agree with you in some aspects. In 2010, I wouldn't have voted for it either. But I see what they do. I see what they do for the community. I see what's going on. And now our obligation now becomes, how do you make it the very best you can? Because
Right.
we're not deciding whether the card room's going to be there or the racetrack's going to be there.
Right, I can't go back and undo
We can't
that.
go back and fix
Right.
it. It's there.
But
It's
I'm not
by
going to
right.
expand what's
So
current.
how do you, so our job is, how do we make this corridor, how do we make all the pieces that we
Fit.
got handed,
Fit.
how do we make them the best we can?
Yeah.
And I'll make the motion for transmittal.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Gold with a second by Commissioner Zalek for transmittal.
So now we have a discussion.
Mr. Minter?
Let me just ask a question, and since Chris is standing there, maybe he can help me out with this, but regarding the other analysis you're talking about doing, I think, Chris, once you transmit, you have so many days you have to act on adoption, correct?
Correct. Once it returns back from the state, we have 180 days to move forward with adoption.
Got a half a
Okay,
year.
So my concern for you is if there's some other larger scope analysis you want to have done, once you've transmitted this, then you're compressing the time you have to be able to do this other analysis to make this fit into it.
I think he's
So-
doing a second one, right? No, you want a second
That would,
today and then do a full corridor.
We would need a transmittal that fixes our comp plan from Marion County.
Right, the second one.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right, okay, agreed.
That's not what the motion is about.
No, that's not the motion, no.
and so.
Motion is just to transmit what we have.
Commissioners, Commissioner Gold, Commissioner Zalek, would you withdraw your motions so that we can have some discussion on the point that Mr. Minter has brought up?
What
the
is
time being.
that, how's that gonna affect the
Well,
applicant?
that's why we're going to come out of the motion and go back and discuss that.
Okay.
If you
I'll-
can just withdraw
I'll
your,
withdraw the motion
Withdraw.
for this.
My
thank
second.
you. So if we talk about doing a corridor study, Chris, and I don't know if you need to talk with the other staff over there, but what kind of timeline would you need to do a corridor study and to bring it to the board, to a public hearing, to be transmitted, and then for us to receive comments back from the state?
With it being the holiday season, and we tend to get remarks about trying to do workshops and hearings at the season, I would think we probably want to bring it back for consideration probably sometime in March, at least to workshop with the commission, and have earlier workshops beforehand with the community, bringing it back to you all in March. Would probably be a good route. That way you'd have time to look at it. And if you do transmit this amendment today, the 180-day timeframe comes after comments back from this request. So if it
Those
comes
generally
back-
take 2 months.
They have a 30-day period after receipt. We have about 10 days to get it to them, to get all the materials together, and they have their process. So that's where it's about 45 days. And so then it would be 180 days from that for that consideration, which would actually take it to like June.
Okay, and so are those days considered, are those the 180 days business days?
No, calendar.
Calendar days, okay.
And I would like to hear from the applicant too on this.
Madam Chair, why don't we, that's overcomplicating this process, right? All we have to do is have staff come back with a recommendation for how commercial utilization would be on the corridor. They can bring it back to us at the next zoning meeting, what their recommendation would be. We hold public hearings and we go through the process.
Correct.
Right, but I think the point that they're,
We don't have to do workshops and community meetings and.
Commissioner, it's very simple. If you want 200 feet
Right.
from the corridor to be commercial, say that.
That's
That's
what I
what we
said.
will
Right.
bring back to you. But if you want a planning analysis, it's gonna take more, and it's gonna take meeting with the community and getting stakeholders' input. It's not just coloring the map and bring it back to you.
We can do that. Well,
So whatever
Mr.
you
Min-
want, we can.
right, and I think that, but I think if you're gonna do that, you need to do it the right way.
I was gonna say, I'm not prepared to not do it the right way.
Right. If
No
you're gonna,
way.
if you're gonna ask for a corridor study and go in there and change and change the land use on some of those properties in that corridor, we need to do it the right way.
Absolutely.
So, Mr. Minter.
Madam Chair, one of the things that came out in the testimony today was that there's the potential for other applicants following on this one if this is approved. So basically, you have a situation where the development patterns are getting ahead of your plan. By setting a precedent, then you're just going to have one after another. And so this is an opportunity for you, if you want, to say, okay, what's our vision for this area of the county, and to decide what your policies are for that area, rather than responding piecemeal as each one of these comes in. So that's what you have before you.
Correct.
Which is what Commissioner Zhao said.
Okay,
Hear from the applicant.
and if we can,
Can I add one more thing, Commissioner?
sure.
And I don't want to make this more complicated. You have a major node at County Road 42 and 301. And I think that's a great direction if you want us to do a corridor planning, but I think it needs to include 301 all the way up to this node, and east on 42 connecting to the villages.
Yes.
That's the area where we are seeing the most pressure.
Correct.
And we need to be ahead of it and do a good planning for that whole area.
So the question is, do we transmit before we do the plan?
I believe Mr. Tillman would like to address the board.
So I broached this subject over a year ago, and I was told that a corridor study needed to be done, that this needed to be looked at, and I've waited a year and nothing has happened. So I brought this application forward, so expecting that this would occur and that the corridor study would occur. You've got 7 months from today if you transmit today. I would like to be transmitted so we can move this process forward. I've already waited to make application to see something happen. This will at least force the issue, and we're on a time clock and something will occur. So I would ask that we please do transmit today so that we can get that time clock started and we can get a corridor study moving forward.
As long as you understand that we're on a time clock,
I
all
do.
of us, and that if it doesn't happen in the time, that you're the one that will be at risk if it doesn't happen in the time that we want this to happen.
I understand.
Okay.
Motion to transmit.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Gold with a second by Commissioner Zalek to transmit. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. All right, that'll bring us to,
Consensus on the planning area?
absolutely,
301, 42?
Correct.
What I described for you?
correct.
How far
You want
north,
that?
east, and west?
From 301 all the way back to connect to where the villages are.
Yes.
And Utopia project, that segment.
And also go north.
Nothing
some-
further than that.
And then 42 over to what, southeast 58th Avenue?
Southeast 80th Avenue, from 301 to Southeast 80th Avenue.
Right, but what about the other way?
North?
Yeah, because you got
Yeah.
you got the RV park and the
north.
B2
Otherwise,
and all
you're
that other
gonna
stuff
leave
over there.
this project out of it.
You mean from 42 to the north on 301?
North, and then I'm actually talking about
58.
west.
I'm not going west.
not going west.
just that node, which is already commercial.
West is sand mine and the
And farms from there
farms on
back
that,
to.
but what
Peter-
about north of
gonna say.
north of 42?
Which was our point all along.
Because you do have commercial
Want me
on,
to go up to Summerfield, we'll go up to
Yes.
I would say go up to
Yes, go up to
Summerfield because you do
Summerfield.
have the large areas that
Well,
are there
DOT
that
came
are
to TOP
next.
and wanted to 4-lane that area that goes north.
Correct.
Yeah, that's
Right,
the
and that's-
only
that's why I'm
segment where you
saying,
have
yes, sir.
transportation issues.
Right.
Those 2 lanes on 301.
We should have fixed
Between
that, we
42
didn't.
and Summerfield.
Well, now we're trying.
Yep, good.
We're
clear?
working on it.
Okay.
Everybody
I
clear?
think
Yes.
so.
Going
So
north.
is it going to encompass?
Pull up the map of that
up
area,
to
please, Chris.
Southeast 58th Avenue?
So hold on one second, and if everyone could wait until they
Don't mind.
are,
That's right here.
until the chair recognizes them to speak, so we don't have
I'm sorry.
people talking over each other. Thank you. Chris, could you
Maybe.
bring that, could you bring that map up?
Yeah, I'm looking to get to that.
And ladies and gentlemen in the audience, if you need to have a conversation, please step outside
We're not even gonna include.
the doors into the lobby.
It's not fronting us.
Wait, no, that's mine.
There's good acoustics.
Hold on. Yeah, we get to hear everything when it's coming from that way. It's okay. I think this is the clearest way for us to all know what we're talking about here.
Because the way I'm.
Chris is looking for the map.
Usually Chris is faster than this.
So what we have here is the site that we're looking at. This is
Thank
US
you.
301 going northward. This is Highway 42 going back eastward to 441.
Okay?
And I can zoom it out to a larger area as well.
That'd be great.
Current, can you put the current map, though?
I don't really need that much. I'm just wondering, how far is it going to go to the left of that map from where I'm sitting?
Left. That's west.
That's west. It
So
should go,
how
it should
far
go
are
to
we gonna-
Southeast 58th Avenue.
Okay.
That's my point, but I heard that it wasn't. But if not, then it wouldn't take in this property that we're looking at.
No, we'll definitely take in that
Yeah,
property.
that property we're looking at today is south on 301.
Yes.
I will note that I guess Southeast 58th Avenue would actually be the western boundary of this site.
Right.
So we would go that far west, right?
If that's what you want.
Well,
Yes.
I'm fearful if we don't go, then we're really doing an exercise that's not gonna help us make that decision
Okay.
easier.
All right, so Chris, how about you take your trusty little pointer there and tell us, show us, so that everybody understands where the study is going to be done.
This is the South County line at Highway 301,
Okay.
from 301 to 58th Avenue.
And the red box
The red
is the
box is the
property.
current site that we've been discussing.
Correct.
So we're talking about extending northward up to the Summerfield area, which is this intersection in here, excuse me. This is currently a rural activity center. This is the road that turns into Sunset Harbor Road,
Mm-hmm.
unless you want to continue further all the way up US 301 to Bellevue.
No, just 147.
Just 147.
Just the Summerfield
Just to that
area.
node.
Yep.
Okay, so just
And-
between this corridor here and then taking back in 42 back to the east.
Correct.
And west of Southeast 58th Avenue.
Just to that intersection, around the intersection.
Right, Commissioner Snow?
Yes.
So we're not, and we're gonna go all the way down to the border line
Yeah,
of the
correct.
two
The county line,
counties?
yes.
Yes.
Still on the county line.
Okay, okay, yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right, everybody knows what they're doing now?
Yes.
Accomplished.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, thank you very much for
Clear as
pulling that
mud.
up.
No, it's clear now.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that will take us to item 14C5. No worries.
Okay. Item 14C5 is related also to item 14C6, which are Commonwealth Standard Development. They are a comprehensive plan amendment for a small-scale SO7 and a rezoning request for a PUD modification for a site of approximately 1.39 acres. This site is currently encompassed by what's called the Woods Edge subdivision. The applicant's requesting to revitalize and modify an existing PUD to allow for a multifamily styled development on the project site. Staff is recommending approval of the comprehensive plan amendment, which would modify the site's land use designation from medium-density residential to high-density residential, and then also approval of their PUD application, which has a type of duplex type arrangement or a multifamily type of arrangement where they are two-story units, garages and living rooms on the bottom, the residential bedrooms on the top, ranging with 2 and 3 bedroom units, for instance. If you can bear with me for just one moment. Need to bring up that. The current land use designation, as I pointed out, is medium-dense residential, and they are requesting high. This site adjoins the existing Golden Hills Golf and Country Club site, which is immediately to the east, and that includes their clubhouse, their tennis courts, and so on, their other facilities. And then to the south of that is Ascot Heath, which is another request that's going to be coming up. Their conceptual plan showed a series of attached buildings, 5 on the north end, 4 on the south end. Staff has recommended alternative design options to go with that, as there weren't some provided by the applicant. Also allowing an allowance that potentially they could do, rather than 9 units as proposed, 10 if they do a series of duplexes. We have seen that trend recently occurring where they're working with duplexes, and that might potentially work. The key here will be the ultimate design of the site, because there are some concerns regarding flood zone protections and other issues in this area. Again, it'll be, at this point in time, they are proposing 2 multi-unit, 2-story townhome type buildings. Their driveway would come in from 80th Court because they do not formally have legal access through the existing clubhouse facility, for instance. And then the townhouse units would essentially back up to the residences to the west, one of which is actually an existing duplex, and then to the south is another existing duplex. And these are the typical architectural view that they provided for the residential units, and then a staggered type pattern of how they would be attached, for instance. And these are the projected floor plans that they've indicated for the residential units. And again, this is the area that there is a flood zone area to the west of the site, which has been concerns, and I know there are residents that are likely here to speak in regard to these requests. So staff is recommending approval of the comprehensive plan amendment and approval of the PUD zoning.
Okay. So they are requesting the multifamily townhome styles, and there would be 9 of them.
Correct. 9. Staff has said if they move into a duplex type pattern, to go ahead and allow them to do 10, so they don't have to repeat this whole process.
Okay. All right.
And all that would be consistent with the land use designation they're requesting. If the land use is not granted, they would have to reduce the number of units proposed.
Okay. Mr. Tillman.
Good afternoon, David Tillman, Tillman Associates Engineering. I think Chris did a pretty good job of presenting it, and of course he did add some buffers to the plan that we had submitted. Every once in a while I do forget to leave those on there. I guess I just don't like doing buffers. I like to give you all the option to give them to me. But anyway, we're asking for a land use change that's adjacent to commercial. So it'll be kind of a step down from commercial to high density down to medium density residential. This area was previously planned out with the 2 additional lots to the south, but they're under separate ownership at this time, and so that plan could not be moved forward with. So it was somewhat similar to this, but there were additional units overall. I think the whole thing was planned for 9 or 10 in that region with those additional lots. We don't have the opportunity for connecting over to 80th Avenue. If we did, that would certainly be the connection point we'd make, but our parcels are separated by a gap there, so there is no opportunity there. And we would take these 4 lots, kind of combine them with easements that would allow access to and from the adjacent roadway, the Northwest 80th Court. And we think it's a reasonable request that'll fit within the community, and it'll be a nice addition to that area.
Okay. Mr. Tillman, what is your client's thoughts on staff's recommendation of, instead of the 2-story units, the duplexes?
I mean, our plans are to build the townhouse style. We feel like that's more appropriate to fit, to fit what we want to on this and preserve as much footprint as possible. We want to limit the footprint because there are stormwater concerns in this region. The soils are not fantastic, and we need to preserve as much footprint area as we can for stormwater capture, so that there aren't any additional impacts to any neighbors. So we do want to try to keep them keep them a little bit smaller and do the basic 0 lot line townhomes.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Tillman?
Not right now.
All right, I do have several people that have signed up to speak regarding this item, and I'll start with EBG.
I've been sitting so long, I had a hard time getting out of that chair.
I feel your pain.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the commission. I'm EBG Jr. I live at 4405 Northwest 80th Terrace, zip code 34482. I'm also a realtor in Marion County. And I beg you to please do not increase the density of the 3 parcels in question on the application 1911093 and application number 1911083. Please deny the application before you. The area in question is dominated by single-family homes. Some of these are quite large. A high-density development will hurt the value of the existing properties. The applicant purchased this property as it is presently zoned. Obviously, they plan to make a profit under that zoning. The residents of Golden Hills, the Forest of Golden Hills, Ascot Heath, have been your customer for many years. Please do not allow a downgrading of this area by high-density development. It's interesting to me that the applicant, Commonwealth Standard Development, LLC, misspelled the word development in their application for an LLC. Please visualize with me the kind of a development a firm that cannot even spell its own name will make in the area. Thank you for allowing me to appear before you. Please deny the zoning request. Thank you for being a good audience.
Thank you. Barbara Taggart, or Taggart?
It's better than Target.
No, I knew it didn't say Target.
I have, first of all, my name is Barbara Taggart. I live at 4760 Northwest 80th Avenue. And the buildings that are being planned for Woods Edge will be next to my residence. And I have pictures. Yes, yes. Exhibit A is my residence and my neighbor's residence. And so I wanted you to see what is presently located at the address. On Exhibit B, on the second page, is the rendering that was originally put forward. And then the last one is that the more narrow double townhouse thing that is not going to go with the flow of the neighborhood. The other thing is the drainage is another big issue. Where my my front yard meets the road is continually wet and the gumbo clay mix. If anybody drives on the edge of that, I have big grooves in my front yard. Every time it rains, it floods that road. That road is in disrepair and is always in disrepair. If if it was disapproved for approval for the original people who wanted to build there, and it was denied, why now is there a change? And what are going to be the remedies for us that live there, that experience the flooding and all of the time? And I would also like to talk about 80th Court too, because the extra traffic down that way is going to impede them, and they have flooding all the time. And so what are going to be the remedies for the people that live there before you build? Thank you.
Thank you. James Mooney. And next will be Jeanette Mooney.
James Mooney, 4825 Northwest 80th Court, Ocala 34482. I'm just continuing, some of the water problem is so great. I think you all seen pictures of the flood we had. Excuse me, I left it last, but the road was underwater right next to where these people are exit and entrance is going to be. It's right next to my house. I sent pictures. The road got closed by the county. Nothing has ever changed since then. So it's the water, that's only one spot. And of course, you're talking driveways. I happened to talk to one of the guys that they're called, I think, DBI, where the slope of the land comes down, and he was on break. And I said, what do you say about this? He said, well, I can't say much, but the slope is extreme, was the only word he said. So more cement. Every one of these houses are going to have cement, I guess driveways. If you've seen this property or look at it, where they're going to put all these with a driveway in and out. It's unbelievable. And all that water goes to our road, which is where the flood was. And several roads are not that wide. Our addition is not like big. If you pass a garbage truck or UPS or Federal Express or even cars, you got to slow down. There's 2 S-curves right at this spot, and both S-curves end right at their driveway. So they get all the road, all the water off all the roads. So just another part of it feeding. So I don't know where they're going to put all the water. And it's the same entrance and exit has to be for these 6, 8, 9 places. And the last ones did get turned down, like she said. This is either the second or third. Our owner bought the land and going to put these very similar holiday homes, they called them last time. So I don't know what they're going to call them this time, but it's pretty bad. So now the entrance to our addition, everything comes in there to the clubhouse.
Mr.
Golfers.
Mooney, I'm right here. Mr. Mooney,
Yeah.
I'm gonna, right in front of you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Your time is up, so I'm gonna need you to wrap your comments up. I'm sorry.
I just want to say the golfers in the clubhouse, everybody comes in and out of the clubhouse, comes in one entrance, and that entrance is off Highway 27. And I hope somebody else talks about that entrance because it's terrible. And if you had hundreds and hundreds of more cars coming in there, something bad's going to happen.
Thank you. Mrs. Mooney. And after Jeanette Mooney will be Carol Pritchard.
Yes, I'm Jeanette Mooney, 4825 Northwest 80th Court, Ocala, Florida 34482. We have lived in the neighborhood for 30 years. We have seen it flood the street. You all should have saw the pictures. There are 2 retention ponds, but they came together and the street was closed. There is a big slope, and actually our screen room is built into the ground. And this is directly behind us. The driveway is going to be right beside us. So I saw the last developer bring bales of hay, and he lined them up to keep the water because it was like a waterfall coming off of that hill. They also built a trench, come out there with a digger and built a trench beside, because the duplex that is beside us they're trying to get water not to go into their house. So I don't know where all this water's going to go. I'm concerned about our house flooding. You know, I don't want to get washed down the hill just because they've got all these houses behind us. You know, whatever. I don't know if any of you've ever been out there and you've driven by, but if you look at it and it was your home and you've been there for 30 years, just ask yourself if you would approve this. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mrs. Mooney. Carol Pritchard.
I think I was put on the wrong list.
Okay,
It's the one with the 5.99 acres.
okay. So you signed up on this one, but I'll move you to this one.
Am I good?
You're good?
I'm sitting down.
Nope, you're not allowed to come back up again.
So we're taking them one at a time?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak to this item? Please come forward at this time.
Good afternoon. My name is Laura Painter, and I live at 8397 Northwest 46th Street, 34482, which is in Bryan Woods, which is a part of the Forest of Golden Hills. My brother and I own a home right next to Jim and Jeanette that backs up to this. Very high property. I've been out there a number of times. I actually had almost needed, I don't know what, it was very steep to climb up it from the parking lot. And then it goes down and it's flattened out, and then Jim and Jeanette's house and my brother's house are on a major downslope. Mr. Marsoff said at the planning and zoning that there is a reason why it has not been built on. There's also Utilities Inc. easement. There's a sewer easement, BFF Corp., running right through there. And where is the water going to go? I'm a retired underground utility contractor, and Mr. Marsoff also said that the water needs to be kept on site from the 1.39. So it cannot be moved down to those other two retention ponds. 1.39 isn't enough ground to hold stormwater, make it go where it needs to go, not affect the homeowners, have a buffer to have 9 units. The number just doesn't crunch. We need a buffer between us, and they obviously admit that there's a problem with the site because they went from duplexes, 4 per that acre, which would fit, we're not against that, to straight up, so they don't have so much impervious. The impervious, the roof line, the cement, is what's going to cause the water to get turbocharged. The faster it goes, the more erosion, the more retention pond you need. If they have less of a footprint and go straight up, that's going to even affect us even more. It's not going to fit. The roof line's going to be as high as the country club. And it's going to be way over the top of our little houses down below it. It does not fit the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
My name is Roberta Atkinson. I live at 4849 Northwest 83rd Court, Ocala, Florida, 34482. My concern is not just the water runoff, which I've been dealing with for 2.5 years with the construction behind my house. They started construction on the house in the spring of 2017. It's still not finished. I have runoff that is so bad that it is literally, we can't even build a backyard. It's right underneath my windows on our spare bedroom and right underneath my huge deck. It's never been finished. That's the runoff problem. Second is trying to get not only on to 27 off of 80th, but try to get off. The other day, I was trying to pull off the road onto 80th, 2 semis coming down 27. Neither one backed off. I barely got off the road. I was shaking so bad, I had to stop. My car, which is a heavy car, literally shook. I bet they didn't miss me by 3 feet. Somebody is going to get killed. It is, and adding more traffic, trying to get out. There's been wrecks there already. It's too many problems. There's putting too many new drivers on the road. And what are we going to do with 100 new cars? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Hi, yes, my name is Robin Arnatti, and I live at 8340 Northwest 47th Street. And I have a couple of things that I would like to pass to you as illustration, if that's okay?
Just know that we can't give it back.
Yeah, that's fine. The first is actually, it's, I'll just describe them and then hand them. The first is a picture of the appraiser's map that was taken offline, and it shows the whole of the Golden Hills area, so the Golden Hills Property Owners Association, as well as all of these subdivisions that are referred to as the Forest of Golden Hills. And on this map, there are pink boxes or parcels that are marked in pink that are all of the, so I think there were 355 signatures that were obtained on a petition. And that petition was for the whole of the neighborhood and both of the projects for Commonwealth. And the petition basically asked that please do not approve any further units beyond what's already approved for the land. And could you please look into water runoff and traffic issues that are alive and well in our community and will be exacerbated. So let me give you this. Okay, so I'd just like to be very clear that for my role here, I am here as an advocate of the whole community and not just of my home, Ascot Heath or Woods Edge. So the second part of what is being handed out there is a picture of a 2-story unit. I think it's the only 2-story unit in this development, and it is in the Forest Villas. I'm not sure when that was approved or built, but I think it was in the last 15 years. And it will show you what a 2-story unit looks like up next to the other single-story villas in that neighborhood. It sticks out like a sore thumb, and it's sitting on a hill, which is where this development will sit as well, up on a hill, and then that hill will be built up as well, so it can absorb the water of those parcels or those homes that are being built up there. Do you have any questions about either of those?
I think we're good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Is there anyone else? Come on forward.
I can talk now.
Yeah, you can talk now.
I'm so sorry for that.
It's
I didn't realize
okay.
it echoed all the way
It's
out there.
okay.
I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Brenda Hudson. I have properties at 4343 Northwest 80th Avenue, Ocala, which is the entrance into the Forest of Golden Hills. I'm also a realtor, and I'm going to go by the common sense part of it, okay? I'm a common sense person. What is built there right now in the Forest of Golden Hills and Ascot Heath is nothing like what this gentleman plans, from what I understand anyway. Everything is on a half an acre to 3/4 of an acre to an acre for one unit. It is not at all compatible if you're putting 9 units on 1.39 acres. The closest thing to that is in Ascot Heath, which is 27 units on 5.66 acres. So that he would be doubling Now, I'm going for all three properties. I'm not going just for one, because what I'm saying is common sense for all three. The zoning there is a PUD, from what I understand, and 4 units per acre sounds reasonable. Everybody has a right to use their property, as it is zoned. To change it at this point is not conclusive as to what's built there. And all the people that have bought there and live there, they enjoy their place very much. To take that away from the enjoyment and put them in a stress situation with almost like apartment units should not be approved. So I am totally against it, and I think that should be taken into consideration. Common sense, and y'all say you've been out to that area, you know that everything's on a half an acre up. Nothing like this. And like I say, Ascot Heath still on 5.66 acres only has 27 units. Okay? So on all his units, you're talking about, I didn't figure it up, but 927 plus another, let's just say 54 units on the same amount of acreage. Okay?
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Come on. If there's anyone else that would like to speak, we have 2 podiums, and you can come to the podium that's not being used.
That's Bruce.
Yes, that's Bruce. Hi, Bruce. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
It's nice to see you.
Good to see you. Bruce Ackerman, 4480 Northwest 80th Avenue, Ocala, Florida 34482. And good afternoon, Commissioners. I believe the rezoning request for so many additional PUDs would be detrimental to the Forest of Golden Hills and Ascot Heath. It would ruin the beauty and peacefulness of the community with the proposed high-density housing. Neither Ascot Heath nor the Forest of Golden Hills have ever had so many houses packed into such a small area, so it would not be a good fit for this community. Everybody has spoken about the drainage issues, and I'm not going to expand on that, but the drainage issues are a major issue. And I don't know if you're aware of this, on the other side of Golden Hills, there was already a project enacted to alleviate the drainage issues. The other issue, in my opinion, is the traffic, especially on Northwest 80th Avenue. It's already at a maximum because of the additional development that has occurred over the years. Ocala National Golf Club is just to the north end of 80th Avenue, and it's not just the golfers. It's also the deliveries with semi-trucks. Frequently, you fear for your life when you are leaving your driveway or just coming back home. There is no turnoff lane at the intersection of 80th Avenue and US Highway 27, and there are already a number of accidents. I'm afraid there will be more. The roads in the area are another issue. The infrastructure is in very poor shape. There are many pedestrians, runners, and cyclists on this stretch of roadway, and there is a school bus stop for several buses where children stand by the road waiting for their buses and walk to and from their homes. With so many more people packed into this currently quaint and law-abiding community, we could also be asking for trouble with a possible unwanted element coming in. In conclusion, so many additional dwellings would not be a good fit for this area of Golden Hills or Ascot Heath. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. You gave your name and address. I'm remembering that now. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Okay, seeing there's no one else who would like to speak regarding this item, I'm going to bring it back to the board and allow Mr. Tillman to come up and give his statement regarding any of the objections that were brought up.
The last gentleman spoke about the unwarranted element, but I did not know that Guy Minner was looking for a home at this point in time. So, you didn't even get that, did you, Guy?
He did. He didn't think it was funny.
It was so
But anyway,
bad, we're just acting
it was
like we
that
didn't
bad?
even hear
Okay, I
it.
We were trying to ignore it.
It was so bad.
So the pricing of this is not to be low-income housing. So that's not what we're targeting at all with these units. It's an upscale product that we're proposing. I would like to point out, we're talking about 4 lots here. 4 lots. Every lot's allowed to build a house plus a guest house. And that would be that'd be 8 units that we could put on these 4 lots at that point in time, and not right now as it sits. And we would not have to do any improvements to stormwater whatsoever. We'd be able to discharge our stormwater right into the system that already exists here on the site, and it would
Mr.
increase the
Tillman,
flooding.
I got to stop you for a second about one of your statements, because I just want to clarify with staff.
I did it before I made the statement, so.
These, with lots this small, you can build a house and a guest house?
It would be difficult to fit them
Hold
on
on,
there.
hold on, hold on.
They can be done.
According to our land development code and the zoning that's there,
It would depend on the zoning. Historically, these lots were R3, so that if they met the square footage and dimension requirements, they could have actually had duplexes on them. There actually are at least 3 lots I know of in the subdivision that I believe qualify for duplexes. Not these lots, but other lots as well.
oh, I want to speak
And
specifically
3
to
of
these lots.
4 lots were sized that they could potentially accommodate duplexes. The one smaller lot at the very beginning is an iffy one.
Okay, they could accommodate a duplex, but could they accommodate a main residence and a guest house,
If they
as
had
was
the
stated?
zoning that allowed that, then they could have a house and a
Okay, Chris, the question I'm asking you is, as they are zoned right now, as it sits right now, if nothing changes, can these lots accommodate a main residence and a guest house?
Their current PUD actually allowed them to be developed in a multifamily form. So they could have multiple lots on there. I'm not sure how to explain that, because their PUD that they had was for a series of attached units.
I understand multifamily and duplex. What I'm asking is 2 separate residences, a main residence and a guest house.
I can confirm one thing.
That's fine. You can get the correct answer. I'm fine with you taking the time
But
to
you
do
did hear him
that.
say these 4 lots could also have duplexes on them, which is 8 units
Mr.
as well.
Tillman, just let Sam come up and answer my question real quick.
No.
Thank you. So, Mr. Tillman, in case you forgot, former real estate background.
Just so you know, I confirmed that before I got up here. I did ask that question, so I feel like I'm getting
Just ask
I'm getting beat up here for something.
It's okay, I'm not, look, Mr.
But
Tillman, I'm not meaning to beat you up. I just want to make sure
But I want you
that
to
the
understand also,
testimony we
all the
have
development
is-
that can
is
occur on these
accurate.
lots right now will add to the problem. We're asking to do something different that we will be required to not add to the issue, add to the drainage problem at all. We will have to hold additional stormwater. There will be additional requirements put on us as far as our stormwater is concerned, and it will be an improvement to the discharge that's occurring right now off of this site. So when it comes to drainage, the project that we're proposing now improves the drainage situation. It does not make it worse. And developing them as the 4 individual lots that they sit as right now would add to the drainage discharge into this neighborhood and would increase the problem. So the drainage issue that's been brought up time and time again, I wanted to make the point that it's being improved by granting this additional zoning. And that is a point that I do not believe is false in any way. That is the case. So that would be an improvement.
Improved by how many feet per second of water movement?
We have to do
I'm just
additional.
curious, 'cause I
We have
mean,
to do
that's the real question
We
then,
have to
right?
do additional. No, it's the retainage that we have to create on site.
But how
It's
much
not-
is it? Is it 1.25? Is it 150?
One
I mean, additional. You have to hold your water plus how much more?
No, we have to hold just our water, not additional water down that's coming from upstream or around us. We have to hold our water. And right now, you're talking about a heavy clay soil that does create a lot of discharge in a rainfall event. In very small rainfall events, you have runoff created from these types of soils. And so
Well, sure.
I completely agree
It's
with
clay if
everyone.
you're gonna have runoff.
Right, exactly. And I like I said in the very beginning, I agree with everyone that there is a drainage issue out here that has to be dealt with. And I would repeat their concerns. And so a project like this is going to have different criteria placed on it where they are going to have to do additional drainage improvements that they would not have to do if they did develop this as single-family residential homes.
Mr. Tillman, hold on one moment. Commissioner Moore.
Okay, I've got pulled up in front of me a picture of the 2-story that you have. I've actually seen a subdivision, but it was the entire subdivision that was built over farmland, but that and also didn't have the water retention issues, it percolated, so, you know, it's good. But they had this on there, and it's very nice upscale. But it fit because it was the entire subdivision. This is just a small thing. My concern is compatibility with the surrounding neighbors. Is, because, okay, when it was all, say, 100 homes that were like that, it was beautiful and it worked, and they were walled around that neighborhood, and it really looked nice, and it was really nice upscale. But when you've got, you know, other homes, like the picture that was shown here, this and that, in just my mind, doesn't match. It's not compatible. So is there maybe a different design that would be more compatible with what's around there?
I don't
This
see.
is, this is the picture of that lady's house that, yeah, sitting back there, but a picture of her house that's already there. It's just, it just doesn't match. It doesn't look, you know, doesn't look aesthetically pleasing, and I'm afraid it would be detrimental to her property. You know?
I mean, we are separated with trees in between her house and this home.
Right, but this
and our frontage is facing the other side of the road.
Okay.
I mean, we're facing the parking lot of the golf course.
But you're still in the same subdivision. It's not like you're a lot of separation there.
Right. There is a very close proximity. These are not large lots.
Right. So that's my concern, is the compatibility. But, you know, I have seen subdivisions that were like that were very nice.
We certainly can bring forth a different architectural style.
Or something that matches what they have.
Right.
You know, something, and I think from what I've heard, that they want something more one-story than two-story. So something, but it needs to be something that kind of matches.
Well, Commissioner Moore, before we even start working on design,
Right.
let's get through whether or not this agenda item is going to be approved.
Yeah, that's a good point, but yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Tillman.
I think I addressed just about everything. I mean, we're not talking about a lot of additional units here. We're not talking about something that's going to, you know, impact the traffic drastically. This is a de minimis impact that's going to occur, you know, when you're
Ladies
talking
and
about
gentlemen, I'd
roadways
ask that
coming in and
you
out.
keep your comments and your laughter or any outbursts to a minimum, or either not at all. Thank you. Mr. Tillman?
So we're not talking about a huge number of additional units here. We're not talking about something that's going to create a major impact at this intersection. It's not going to be something that you'll see the difference when you put these additional units into the community. So I don't believe this is an impact. I don't believe this is going to create a problem in the subdivision. I think it will help relieve some of the drainage issues, and when it comes to the transportation impact, it's not going to be seen.
Okay. Commissioner Stone?
Mr. Tillman, who will own the units?
They will be up for sale afterwards, after they're constructed.
So they will be owner
Occupied, yes. They will be divided as individual property owners.
Okay. And do you know who currently maintains the roadways in the subdivisions today?
But I do not know, but
Marion County, we
Those
do.
are the county.
Okay.
Same ones that put up the flood signs.
Sir, you can't talk from the audience. I'm sorry.
Well, I thought I'd help her.
So what,
Sir?
what remedies would the current owners have from your drainage proposed?
I'm not going to tell you that it's a major impact as far as a remedy for what they have. I mean, it's going to hold back additional stormwater from what's being discharged at this point in time, and it certainly holds back more than if we develop them as single-family lots. If we develop them as single-family lots, then it's just they discharge out to the roadway and create more impact than what is currently there. So that's the difference. I would not anticipate that if we have the same type of rainfall events that we've had in the past, to expect there to be less of a flooding issue on the roadways that exist there. But it would certainly not be more, which would be what you would have if we developed it as single-family residential units.
I don't know if I agree with that. If you developed it as single-family residential units, they would still have to meet the requirements for water discharge.
No, this was a master development, and that's not the case for single-family homes.
So are there new roadways being proposed? There are a few entrances.
So rather than having the four entryways that would be done if you did it as a single family, it'll be a common access point that will occur. So it'll reduce the number of driveway connections that connect out to that roadway and bring them all in on the one T roadway that was shown in the concept plan.
Couldn't 2 cars pass?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Zalek?
So if we allowed you to develop them differently, David, would it be post-condition? Would you hold the water in a post-condition state?
The post condition would match or exceed the precondition state.
So can we ask Tracy a question? I'm really curious because she and I have looked at these floodplain maps here before, and I just don't think this is going to change anything. But
good afternoon, Commissioners. Tracy Straub, County Engineer. So the requirement if you put it into this change that they have to provide for stormwater for their development, they would look at doing a 100-year, 24-hour pre-post because there is no direct floodplain right around them.
Right.
However, they have to demonstrate recovery in 14 days. I suspect that will be a challenge at this location, and they could very well end up with back-to-back volumes.
so the part of the problem though is
What does that mean?
is that today they have a platted subdivision that has a system in place. So if we don't modify anything, they don't have to meet any additional criteria, correct?
Correct.
Right. So they don't have to do anything. They just dump into the current system.
Yes, sir.
If we change it, they will have to actually meet your criteria, and we can enhance the post water retention, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Tracy, Commissioner Stone has a question for you.
Yeah, what you just said before you answered that last question, can you give that in layman terms?
So we require, in most of the county, we require what we call a 100-year, 24-hour storm event, which is approximately 11.5 inches of rainfall. So for every, when I work with an individual homeowner, for every amount of impervious coverage that you're putting down, whether it's your building footprint, your sidewalks, your driveway, let's say you're building a 3,000 square foot home. Then I need a stormwater pond that is approximate in size 3,000 square feet by about a foot deep. 3,000 square feet wide by about a foot deep. Now you can change how that's shaped, but that gives you the volume that you need. But your soils have to be able to absorb that within 14 days. And in that portion of the county, the soils don't absorb so well. So what you can't absorb in 14 days, you have to make a second volume difference. So let's say you only absorbed half of it, then you need to put for another half in available in volume as well. So your pond would be 50% larger.
So when and how do you decide the amount? Do you wait for a rainfall and?
No, the engineers will do their calculations. They will go get geotechnical borings using a geotechnical engineer, and they will run permeabilities in the soils, in the locations of the water retention ponds.
And we know, you and I have looked at problems out there already.
Yes, ma'am.
We know there is an issue here.
I suspect that it would be a larger storm. I mean, a larger volume pond. And so I think that'll be a struggle with trying to actually fit that on the site as well. I don't know how big a footprint he's looking for.
Commissioner, we've already closed public comment, and I'm sorry we can't have anyone else come up. No. I'm sorry. We have a procedure that we have to follow.
Oh, Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Tracy,
Commissioner
can I ask
Zalek?
one more question? Does that current drainage plan go onto the golf course then? Because I know the DRAs are north of that, but the water off of this is actually going across the parking lot.
So some of this is tied into the golf course system. You're actually overlapping between two different subdivisions in Golden Hills and the adjacent subdivisions. So some of it is tying into the old existing golf course system, and I think some of it's tying into the neighborhood DRAs. But I have not reviewed it at that level of detail to know where the water's flowing.
So you will if we make the change though, right, in the site plan?
I'm sorry, say that
You
again.
will in the site plan?
We will have to, yes. Actually, the engineers will analyze that, and then we'll demonstrate that we'll review it to make sure that their analysis is correct.
And so because of those soils, that's why he's I mean, that's why I'm presuming he's requesting to go vertical.
I
Wouldn't you have to have that kind of?
Yes.
I mean, I know that's one way to make up the additional space, the ground space that you need. I don't know all of why they're going vertical.
I just don't see how they do it on that, especially on that parcel.
So while you're here, the one you and I looked at last year,
Yes.
this would intensify that problem.
This is, I don't think that this would necessarily, Commissioner, I haven't
It's
looked at
flowing-
if it's flowing in that direction, they're gonna definitely be feeling it more. And that project is wrapping up construction as we speak.
Okay.
It's certainly not going to solve anything.
No.
No, it won't,
Could
it
add.
won't solve. It won't
I
solve.
mean, you're talking about how many square foot under that you're actually. Yeah, I don't know. You think the footprint of that would really disperse that much more water?
Because of the,
I mean, the clay's already going to make it run
It's an
off.
angle, it's all.
both of it.
Yeah.
You've got the lay of the land and then the soils.
The topography is a big deal.
The problem is that really, is it actually better? It's better for them to hold 150% of their water because of the way it has to. I mean, in theory, from a stormwater perspective, that's better for them to build bigger DRAs than for them to dump into the current situation. I would think. I can't prove that, but can you prove that?
So, Commissioners, to what Commissioner Zalek is alluding to is correct. The soils out there are already very poor from a water storage condition. So you're going to get a lot of runoff regardless. Whether you put pavement down or the existing, you'll gain just a wee bit from the existing condition. But then when you put in the pavement, how the engineer controls it, directs it, captures it, can make a difference. And where that's the problem that we get into if they don't. If they just go and they put in a house, we don't get to control and put in a system that collects it and gets it away from other folks. Because the driveways, the roof lines, all of that can really shuttle water onto adjacent properties much faster and in a much more concentrated way.
Yeah, because they can almost do a deeper block wall, higher end DRA that can hold a whole lot more capacity than anything doing it today, correct?
The engineer can get creative.
So that's the trade-off we're looking at today.
Well,
Just trying to throw it out there, trying to figure out.
I also think that you have to consider the design concept.
I don't disagree, but the design, the reason that they're asking, I would presume, we can ask the applicant that they're doing that in order to gain the storage
I
space.
understand that, but so here's the question. Is our responsibility to alter or to give them the design concept that they want so that they can have the maximum number of units, which in turn has a 2-story townhome looking down into a single-family residence to accommodate the developer, or are we to think about what's in the best interest of the surrounding community that's already there?
I totally agree. I think the reason they're asking, again, I'm presuming, putting words in their mouth, I think the reason they're asking for a less square footage footprint spread out across the land is in order to, because they're only gaining 1 unit in this particular piece, right? That's a lot of work. And is there, is there a financial gain there?
If we build it as a single-family home, we can still build a 2-story single-family home. There's no restriction here for that. So, I mean, the 2-story portion is really, it's kind of a moot issue. A 2-story can go there now, a 2-story can.
45?
Wait,
I don't know what in that subdivision.
What was the question?
Is it 45?
I believe so.
The height
The
is
peak?
It's 40 or 45.
40?
We're not going to exceed that height anyway. We're not going to reach that
Is there a
height.
deed restriction on this property?
There are many deed restrictions on this property. I'd have to look at what, but obviously there's been a
Well, I mean,
2-story
in the
built
deed
here.
restriction, there could be a 1-story limit.
No, we already know that there's 1 unit built inside this community that's
Subdivision that
2-story.
has 2 stories?
Right. So,
Okay.
It's a very nice community.
but, and I mean, we do want to reduce the footprint because we want to reduce the discharge. That is one of the reasons for going to the 2-story. I said that in the very beginning.
Well, it's skewed because the purchase price is skewed, so it looks like it is, according to the property appraiser on the .55
Answer, Angel.
acre lot, $45,000.
Community.
For the 6
Thank you.
acres?
No, not the 6 acres. That was a different one.
Probably not, right?
Hold on.
So is the next
Should I
45
say what we're
foot
doing?
gable?
You can if you want. Commissioner Stone has just asked me to look up the approximate value of the property.
Just to see, what is the property value as it is today, vacant?
Well,
I
it's
don't
4
know the
different
answer to that.
parcels, remember? So,
It is.
so the one that I gave you is about 45. If you take, just assume 50 grand for each one for $200,000.
$200,000.
Value of the parcel.
Now that, don't
That-
hold
that-
me to
that-
that. That was just a
that's-
quick off the top of my head. I'd have to go into something else to look it up. I'm just going off the property appraiser's website right now. Anybody have any comments or questions for Mr. Tillman? Mr. Tillman, I guess you get to sit down for a few minutes.
All right, thank you.
Okay. And then I have to tell Chris, I wasn't trying to pick on you, Chris. I was just trying to get the answer to the question.
No, she was picking on you, man.
He knows I would never do that. All right, thoughts? Commissioner Stone, this is out in your district.
I can't support it. I won't support it. I don't think that it fits with the neighborhood. I do think it's issues that many have brought forward. The aesthetics, it would change the complexion of the neighborhood. I travel that roadway every single day coming and going, and traffic is bad on 27. DOT already put a project in on several of the roadways so that cars cannot cross to make right and left turns off of 27 a little further down to save lives. We're looking that could probably be the case in this neighborhood as well. Trying to get across those 4 lanes now of the people who live in these neighborhoods is an issue, and the traffic is only going to intensify on 27 as development continues to happen. So I will not be supporting this.
Okay. Is that a motion?
I make a motion to deny.
Do I have a second?
I'll go ahead, second it,
Are we
because
on
I don't believe
C5 or
it's
C6?
compatible with surrounding areas.
We're on
C5 and C6.
C5 and
C5,
C6
right?
are together. We're considering them together.
Yeah.
Well, I make a motion to deny C5 and 6.
And I'll second that, because it's just what's shown here is not compatible with surrounding area. Now, I'm not against something else in the future, but this just isn't compatible.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Stone with a second by Commissioner Moore for denial. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. All right, that'll take us to item number C7. And before we go into C7, Chris, I want to take a 5-minute recess.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
By the way, thank you for being here.
If everyone could please take their seats, we are going to come out of recess. If you could please take your seats.
Whoever left the,
And whoever brought the Ferrero Rochers, thank you so much.
thank you.
I was getting hungry, about to be hangry. Was that you, Denise?
No, ma'am.
No?
I stood and brought you some.
Naja, did you bring the Ferrero Rochers? Oh, it was Naja. Thank you.
Delicious.
I didn't bring anything for everybody.
Oh, sorry, guys.
Good job. Thanks, Notch.
All right, we're going to bring this meeting out of recess and go to our final item for the day, 14C7. Mr. Risen.
Mr. Resident Gross Services, this is item 14C7. This is a request for rezoning for a site that is currently a PUD, but it has gone dormant. In terms of, it was initially developed as an RPUD for the southern portion of the overall properties. The northern half became separated out and is now being proposed now as a regular standard PUD with additional development proposals for the site. The other original project overall for the property was for 65 dwelling units. A number of them are undeveloped on this northern portion, approximately 30, and the applicant is actually requesting to increase that overall to 47 units. In the southern portion, however, there were approximately 10 units that were not built. So this site overall would be a smaller increase than 17, but approximately 10 total for the overall project. Staff is recommending approval of this request, which proposes a series of multifamily attached structures, 2 stories, with the townhouse type with the garage below. And this is a similar townhouse type pattern, which a combination of duplexes, quads, or 1 quad, and then triplexes in the southern Ascot Heath project. And again, staff is recommending approval of this request, subject to certain development conditions regarding the surrounding properties.
Commissioners, any questions for staff?
None for me.
All right. And is the applicant here? Why didn't you just sit in the front row?
I'm getting ridiculed every time I walk up here by staff. I think we're gonna have some of them removed.
Hey, be careful, they might want to have you removed.
Thank you, Mr. Tillman.
Thank you, Mr. Tillman.
Thanks, buddy.
You again.
Okay. That was a quick 5 minutes.
Right, as Chris commented, our initial proposal for this site and our application was for 47 units. We worked on our footprint a little bit more regarding the units that were going to be proposed for this site, and we've reduced, we want to reduce our request down to 40 units because we don't see the ability to put full 47 units on there as we previously had laid out. So you'll see that we have submitted a new plan with a different layout that is proposed. We've got and if you look at the very back, that was the original, I believe, 47 units that we had submitted. So we're going to reduce that number of units. One of the things that we were proposing is to make an additional connection out onto Northwest 80th Avenue. The last concept that I had them working on yesterday, they did not show that connectivity, but we do intend on making that connection. And our connection over at Ascot Heath, the existing portion of Ascot Heath, would just be an emergency access only. We would stabilize a section of that to make that connection, but keep it grass and keep it separated so we wouldn't be mixing the traffic. Which is one of the concerns that they had at the Planning and Zoning Commission, was adding additional traffic to their entrance in and out of the existing Ascot Heath. So that's kind of layout. We're going to probably hear a lot of the exact same comments from the adjacent members. So I would point out that the previous RPUD that was approved for this was approved for 34 units. So we're only asking for a 6-unit increase. This does fit within the existing land use category that it's in. The existing land use category allowed us to do the full 47, but we're here requesting to modify that PUD down to 40, which is a 6-unit increase from what was previously approved on this piece of property.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tillman. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Tillman at this time? All right, seeing none, I do have several people that signed up ahead of time. I'll call you up 2 at a time if you can go to the respective podiums. First is Jolene Mikulakavage and then Denise Alexander. Mikulakavage. All right. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Jody Mikulakavage. I live at 5188 Northwest 76th Court in Ocala. I've lived in the Golden Hills area for 24 years. We thought we had found a diamond in the rough in a historic community carefully planned with an abundant green space and mature trees. This may be considered old-fashioned planning to some, but to many of the residents we share our community with, it's considered responsible planning. Commonwealth has proposed for the development of 40 units on a tract of land north of Ascot Heath community, which was carefully planned to contain only 34 units. This increase in units is alarming, as it would pose a negative impact on our community. As you can see in the exhibits that I sent you, the front designs are the current designs that are in Ascot Heath, and the second design was the design that they had proposed when we came in front of zoning, and then it's the same 2-story. And I also wanted to point out, it looks like it's a nice 2-story unit with a garage. If you read what they've printed, it says covered parking. And there's no place in Golden Hills in any of the communities that allows carports. Commonwealth has underestimated the resistance that they received to their proposal from our area residents, but this resistance is due to the adverse impact it is bound to have on our community. The drainage issues our community experiences are of legitimate concern. As you know, the Golden Hills soil is full of gumbo clay, which doesn't percolate. The planning zoning officials in our county have known of the drainage issues in Golden Hills community for years, and I strongly believe that the development of this land will cause additional flooding problems for our area residents, even without increasing the number to the 40 or 47 units. Flooding is a definite concern for our area residents. We have 2 homes. One has, I'll finish. Just please do not approve Commonwealth's request to increase the density of this tract of land for the sake of the property owners in the area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
After Ms. Alexander will be Bud McClure.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Mr. Administrator, and Mr. Mentor. This is not about stopping Commonwealth's project. It is about responsible development. There are 3 main issues. You've heard from all of us about what they are: traffic, drainage, standing water, and safety. I live in the very first house as you come into Ascot Heath. It is a 1-lane entrance and a 1-lane exit with a median in the middle. I back into my garage because it's not safe for me to back out of my driveway. That being said, the road going into Ascot Heath is only a two-lane road. Going into that entire development is only a two-lane road as well. There is no deceleration lane. There is at Golden Hills entrance. There is not at the entrance where we come into our homes. Much like Commissioner Stone, I travel that road every single day going back and forth to work. It is very dangerous, and the speed limit increases once you get past 80th Avenue to 65 miles an hour. Much like the lady who spoke before, there are many occasions when I'm trying to make the turn into the road to get home that I go into the grass because people behind me will not slow down. And I use my blinker and I tap my brakes. Drainage and standing water, you're absolutely correct. You've heard that. There is a project right now in Golden Hills to remove drainage water. We understand that when the development comes in, they're going to do engineering, they're going to do all the responsible things. Drainage is always going to be a problem. So the more properties we put there, the more traffic you put on our streets, the more people you put in that community, the more it increases all of the problems that already exist there. We respectfully request that you consider our appeal to limit the number of units to the original amount that they were awarded when they purchased the property, and that you deny this zoning request. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. McClure, and after Mr. McClure, Carol Pritchard.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your patience this afternoon, and ours too. I want to just reiterate a couple issues that were addressed in the earlier proposal that you voted against, and that was the drainage issue. I bought a home here 3 years ago, 4517 Northwest 79th Terrace Road, and my property is the 3 units that directly abut the proposed development. In fact, the new development comes right up to my driveway. When I bought the house, there were serious water issues in the front yard, so we had to redesign, engineer the roof line, add additional roof onto the space. We had to redo the gutter system and put in extensive French drains in the front of my lawn to move it from wetland now to just barely damp. But it was a major effort, so I'm concerned about the drainage here. Traffic that they've raised in this issue. I think it's interesting that Mr. Tillman conceded that 47 homes was a ridiculous request, and now attempting to add just 6 units to the property as an attempt to recover from his failure at the last meeting to win approval of this plan. And it is only 6 units, but to us, that's an exponential difference. And I would argue that the developer can make as much money from 34 units as he can from this additional 6 units that he's proposing here. Finally, I want to address the issue that other people have spoke to under different umbrella today, and that's the quality of life issues and the integrity of our neighborhood. It is a unique historic district. If you've been there in that area, I think you'll agree with me that it is pretty special, and one of the reasons I bought there. I'm not against development, but I would like new development to fit with the current existing design. And when I speak to the quality of life, I'm not only talking about the quality of life of my neighbors here and in the neighborhood today, but the quality of life for new people that are going to be moving in and joining us in the community. And I think that well-planned, designed 34 units would fit with the current 27 units we have in Ascot Heath. Thanks for your time and your patience.
Thank you, Mr. McClure. Ms. Pritchard.
Hi, my name is Carol Pritchard. I'm at 4350 Northwest 80th Avenue, Ocala, 34482. When you come into our development, I'm the first house on the left. So I stand right out there where everything is. Our front yard is 2 grand oaks, which reminds me of the country, reminds me of Ocala, the old Ocala. And we bought there over 2 years ago, saying to ourselves, we've moved into a park. I walk my dog. It's a beautiful neighborhood, wonderful neighbors. Now they're intending to bring, I call them high rises, above what our normal houses are. And it changes the whole atmosphere there. We get a lot of drainage down the road. We're like on a hill. We see the traffic of all types going up and down that road. And to double the population there, and knowing what it's going to affect in that neighborhood is a shame, because it's going to take away from everything that was there and was presented when we bought our house. and it's a shame of what it'll happen to. So I want to thank you both, or all of you, not both of you, for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak regarding this item? Go ahead and come forward. I have 2 podiums.
I guess it's almost good evening.
I know. We're going to have to order dinner here before too long.
My name is Dan Hicks, 421 South Pine Avenue, Ocala, Florida. I'm here on behalf of the Ascot Heath Homeowners Association, Inc., which is the, as you go in 80th, they're on the south side, and it was built out through about 2005. And as you go further on, this is the subject of the petition here today, which is basically about the same acreage, 5.99 acres. When we went to planning and zoning, the north is entitled to 34 units under the current zoning. They had asked for 47, which was 38%. Now they've dropped to 6 additional units, which is still 18% more. So just to put it in terms where everybody understands it, if you had 100 units, you now could put in 118 units. All of the people in Ascot Heath that I represent, they've been there for years. As I said, the last construction was in 2005. They knew what could be done there when they bought. And now the developer wants to change it. Now, the developer didn't buy this thinking, I got to have some more units to make money. He bought it because the price was right and he knew what he could build and he knew he could make money. He's just trying to do more now. And it's going to take away some of what these people bought. They bought knowing what could go there. This makes it a little easier when it's PUD development as opposed to a plat, where if you got to change plat, it's a lot of work and the people. So we're not in favor of that. Secondly, the plot plan, and there's a new one here I see tonight, but the plot plan that was filed as part of the application only has a setback of 8 foot from the unit on our northeast side of what is currently there, and it should be back 30 foot or something. It does not provide for any type of break, and I understand the code says if it's multifamily or multi-development against multi-development, you don't have to. I think whether this would be to stay like it is with the 34 units, or if the commission were to approve any additional units, we need at least an E-type buffer to distinguish it. Probably the biggest thing is, and you've heard from Robin Arnott, who's the president of the association I'm here representing, the petition that she brought forth on the earlier Commonwealth petitions had 359 signatures on it. So it's not just our small group of people. I mean, just generally, you've heard what all is going on there and the problems they have, and all we're going to do now is exacerbate them even more by adding additional units. With that, I'm not going to go into the road problems, the flooding problems, because you're going to hear enough of that, and there's still a few more people to talk. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Mr. Hicks.
Thank you.
Well, here I am again. I'm EBG Jr. I live at 4405 Northwest 80th Terrace, and I've got a pill reminder going off over here. Y'all excuse me. I describe myself as an 87-year-old redneck. But anyway, I think the major issue that in my mind that's being overlooked is the economic detriment that the multiple family units will create. And I urge you to deny the application for any additional units. Also, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my background. I was president for about 12 years of the largest drainage and flood control district in the United States. I know a little bit about runoff. The more driveways that you have, the more concrete, the faster the runoff. So, but anyway, I will humbly request that you deny this application.
All right, you can go ahead and go to the other podium if you like.
Leslie Allen, 5310 Northwest 78th Court, Ocala. I am opposed to this zoning change. The current zoning is more appropriate for this piece of property. Keeping the existing density will fit in with the character of this beautiful neighborhood. To increase the density on this parcel is not appropriate for this well-established neighborhood, where all of the existing dwellings are farther apart. Commonwealth Standard Development knew the zoning when they bought the land. In my opinion, it is far more important to preserve the integrity of Golden Hills than for Commonwealth Standard to change the zoning for their own gain. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, how are you? Good evening. My name is Colleen McKenna. I live at 4515 Northwest 79th Terrace Road. Bud McClure is my neighbor. So I have a little bit of a prepared statement here. So you've heard a lot of the community concerns, and I actually have written an email to you guys, and hopefully you have reviewed it. But I want to share one more concern that I have that has not been addressed. To the best of my knowledge, this is the first attempt that Commonwealth Development is making at developing property. They have no history of development in Marion County or in the state of Florida, and that alone is not the only concern, but it's the combination of inexperience and the apparent motivation to maximize the number of units on every parcel they own to maximize the profit. Their interest appears to be building quantity and not to leave a legacy or a community built with pride, or that an area that they will be proud of. I am concerned that Commonwealth has been established to make as much money as possible on this property and not build a lasting business model. This situation contributes to an environment where short-term decisions will be made to save money, and these decisions will have long-term consequences for the neighborhood and the residents. This is an unacceptable risk to our community, and I believe that the current zoning of the old Ascot Heath North design was a result of a well-thought-out vision for these parcels of land. I believe we should honor that vision and maintain the zoning as is currently designated. And thank you for your consideration. And I timed it out to 1 minute and 30 seconds.
You did great. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Beverly Cox. I live at 4490 Northwest 84th Terrace, Ocala, 34482. If you're not familiar with the neighborhood, I would just like to point out that Northwest 80th is the only access road for all of those neighborhoods. It is not just Ascot Heath. It's not just the new developments that are planned. It's the Forest of Golden Hills, it's Bryan Woods. So there are hundreds of homes back there that all must use this one entrance, and that road is a dead-end street. There is no thoroughfare. So you come in and you go out there. All traffic is forced through there. Having said that, and agreeing with everything my neighbors and colleagues have said, I would just like to say that I was very heartened to hear earlier in the day comments from our chairperson and from a member of staff. And those comments were, getting this right is important to the existing property owners, and high density is not consistent with the surrounding land use. And I hope you will heed those words. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address this item? All right, if there's anyone else, go ahead and come on over to the other podium.
Hi, I'm Robin Arnaudy again, 8340 Northwest 47th Street. And I just wanted to add a little bit of some quantification. And Bev just mentioned that there were hundreds of homeowners that used 80th Avenue as their way into and out of their homes. The exact number of homes is 188. And so if you put that 188 homes against the 55 to 60 that Commonwealth is looking at putting into this same neighborhood, I think it gives the impression that we're kind of being hit with a development tsunami. And so I just wanted to reiterate that as a point, and to thank you for your time and your consideration. I know these things aren't easy, and I've also learned something today, but thank you very much.
I hope you learned something good. Good. All right, is there anyone else that would like to speak regarding this item? All right, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and close the public comment portion of this portion of our public hearing and bring it back to the board. Mr. Tillman.
So, one of the first comments was regarding open carports. This is an enclosed garage that we're proposing. We aren't proposing, it was labeled that way. The picture shows that it's an enclosed garage, and we certainly are going to move forward with that type of design. I did not make a statement that 47 units that we originally applied for was a ridiculous number. I said that what we did is we looked at our footprint. The owners wanted to move forward with a larger footprint than what was previously put on there, and so therefore the units would not, 47 units won't fit on this piece of property, and we want something that is more square footage, fits into the style of the existing neighborhood, and we want to be part of the existing community. We don't believe this is a negative economic impact. This is a community that's been in place for years. New activity in that region will actually bring property values up. It's not going to drive property values down. And like I said before, we're not looking to do a low scale type unit. This is upper scale type development that we're looking to put in that will fit within this community and be the same type of use. The 47 units that we applied for is the allowable density on this piece of property. We've lowered it to 40 units. I actually contacted Mr. Hicks to talk to him to see if there was any type of discussion that the homeowners association would be willing to have regarding coming to some type of compromise. But we voluntarily moved it down because we want to put a better product into the neighborhood. This is not a far reach. This is something that is absolutely reasonable to put on this piece of property. It would not have been unforeseeable for them to have originally approved this for 40 units or more on this site whenever it was previously approved with our PUD. It just happens to be that it was balanced out at 34 the way they had it. They were doing a common driveway. We're proposing to separate that so that our traffic isn't flowing through the remaining portion of Ascot Heath. Like I said, we'd make that just an emergency access connection so that emergency vehicles could come through there if there ever was any blockage at the entryway of this development. I feel like this is an extremely reasonable request, especially at the 40 units. We didn't squeeze the footprints down to the smallest possible unit to put something in here that was cheap and get as much density as we wanted to out of here. The reason the density was reduced was because we want to put a good quality product in this neighborhood, and we're talking about 6 additional units in, as was stated earlier, 188 unit residence. This is not an impact. This is something that they won't see any difference in between 34 or 40 units whenever we're talking about traffic at the end of the day. We know that this is a quality development. That's what we brought forward. That's what we tried to present. And I think by lowering the number of units, we've shown that that's what we want to put into this neighborhood. And we feel like we'll be good quality neighbors, and this matches what is there already.
Thank you, Mr. Tillman. Commissioner Stone.
So, Mr. Tillman, in the current design that is in Ascot Heath now versus what was originally submitted at zoning, which appears to be single-story units, today the request is to go to the 2-story.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am. Any additional questions?
No, I do want a clarification. Well, I need a clarification. You said that the 40 units is what is allowed now. Is that per your request?
47 is what would be allowed based on the land use, but 40 is what we are requesting.
Oh, okay, based on your request, the 47 would be allowed. What is the existing allowable? Is it the 34 because of what was originally planned with the development?
don't know whether there isn't it.
That's the way
No,
I
there's,
read it.
there's something right here that I'm reading, and actually it looks like the remaining unused is 29.
Actually, there's 30 units that were in this portion, and then there are another 7 units in the southern portion that were never developed because they changed the plan from duplex units to single-family units. So they have 6 spare units plus another single unit that was never pursued and has likely been affected by a larger easement that was created later on. So there are 36 units from the original approval of the RPUD that are available to the overall site.
Okay.
So if you went 40, that would be an additional 4 units, which would be consistent with the existing high-density residential land use designation.
Okay, so right now, there's 36 units.
Correct.
Thank you.
Actually, I thought Chris said it
Commissioner
was
Zalek?
expired.
Well, I was going to ask that question. What happens when it expires? What
Well,
does?
you have an overlying actually land use, but you don't actually have zoning, right?
Was this one expired or the previous one was expired?
The previous one was expired in the
Yeah.
past, or the other one was expired. This is an RPUD, which
Yes,
was a
this does
special
not.
exception use created in the 80s. It's a very unusual animal that's left over in our code.
So it's not expired.
We would not look at it as being an expired project.
Okay.
But you're still, so today you're still changing it to just a regular PUD, right?
Correct. And that's where, in this respect, because they would be having now a separate entrance for this northern portion, that is one of those changes that we look for. Because they're changing the external access point, it does require commission approval.
And the height changes too.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hicks. Well,
Do that.
I can't have you come back up. I've already closed public comment. I'm sorry.
It's point of order. The application, what they've written up says there are 34 units allowed there
Mr.
right now.
Hicks,
And he's changing.
Mr. Hicks, I can't bring you back up. I'm sorry.
And I think that may be there. I may have had an occasion where I double counted a couple of the duplex units, and I apologize. So that's where I was reconfirming it again. So there's 30 on this site and 7 that were undeveloped in the southern portion. And I actually have a map that I can show you if you want to see that map of that, for instance.
Okay.
But to
But
Mr. Hicks'
I'm
point,
still
the application does say that it is currently approved for 34 units is what is in all the paperwork that was distributed.
Correct.
Is the point Mr. Hicks
Yeah,
was
I've got that here. That's why I was asking the question, so that we could clarify, because I wanted to clarify your statement and then clarify what's actually there.
Madam Chair, could we please clarify what we really are being asked to approve?
Well, we're being asked to approve 40 units.
Okay, well, excuse me, let me rephrase my question. Could we get clarity as to what the prior agreement was? So Chris, could you double check your math and tell us what exactly was approved previously?
If we can get that map up on the screen, I think that will also help. This left portion is the northern area that we're talking about, which is this site. This is approved for a series of mostly duplex units and then 2 triplex units. This was 30 townhomes. What occurs is this portion here was an area that was originally approved, and you can see these are duplexes. They instead then platted that as single-family residences, which decreased and left 6 properties or 6 units unused. And then this one has never been constructed. This was a single unit by itself. That's this 1 unit. So there are 37 units generally available in the RPUD today that would be available. And as you'll notice, this original plan had only 1 point of access for the whole site. So that's where they've proposed to make this an emergency access connection, which staff would support, and then have a brand new entrance that would come in approximately here.
So they'll do 37.
They could do 37 today.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Tillman or staff?
I think if you guys are concerned about the height, you should just make sure, because the height requirements change in the PUD. I don't know what they are, but I know they're not normal 40.
So, height requirements? Chris? No,
The RPUD did not have height requirements at that point in time that I'm aware of. So if this PD is granted, it can potentially establish height requirements, for instance.
But the normal one is like 75, right, under PUD? Pretty sure.
Well, this is an RPUD, and at that point in time, it didn't set a height standard.
Right.
that I'm aware of.
Today it would.
But today, what would, under a PUD, what are our height
We're actually
requirements?
changing it.
That's actually proposed by the applicant then typically, although it is
Approved by
based
the
on
board.
what surrounds it, for instance.
Okay.
Based on what surrounds it?
Correct,
So
yes,
can you give us an idea what the height that's surrounded?
What we look for residential, to them that within 100 foot of other adjoining residential, they match the heights that are currently in place. So if all of the units that are next door to it to the south are single-story units, then for the first 100 feet to the south, we would look for that to typically be single-story as well, unless your approval allows for a higher height.
Can you tell me how high a single-story unit is?
Typically, it's 10 to 15 feet, depending on peak of roof and how high they want the ceilings in the residential units and so on.
But originally in the R.
Code, it's up to 40.
Yeah, it's up to 40. But Chris, in the original RPUD, there were some townhomes in that? I thought you said something about in the original plan of the RPUD.
The RPUD doesn't
Yes,
have
they
it.
had,
You can build as high as you want.
there's a series of
I
3-unit
have a
buildings, a
reason for
series of
asking
4,
that.
and a 4-unit building.
What was that?
If I can get the map up there, you can kind of see where they are. 2 of the multi-unit buildings are currently existing. There's a 3-unit building here, which is that northeastern one. And then there's a 4-unit building. And then another 4-unit building here. And then this plan for the northern portion had 2 triplex or 3-unit buildings roughly here in the center. And then all these other units are 2 units. The smaller squares are their garages.
Which I think we got pictures of that.
And yeah, those are the pictures of the current sections, which were the older plans that were done back then.
But would be within 100 feet of the
Yes, ma'am.
proposed? Okay. I'm sorry, Madam.
Oh, no, you're fine. All right, any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you. Mr. Tillman, did you have something else you wanted to add? Okay. Do you have comment? Anybody have any comments thus far? Are you ready to make?
I'll make a motion if we're ready.
Okay, Commissioner Stone?
I would make a motion to approve 37 units to follow the height of the current buildings within 100 feet.
Okay.
And all the other conditions that staff also had in here, just concerning, I think there were some buffers, and have to go back and look at all of them.
If you're gonna keep the units the same, why would you even change it?
Right.
I don't understand.
What they were allowed previously was 37 units.
Yeah, but
Or
they're
the
keeping it
lowering
same, they
it
want
by-
to change it.
Sorry.
Well, they want to change it to go up.
To 40.
No, I understand what they want, but if we're going to keep it just what it is now.
But they are also changing the access, right? Is that would needed?
That's correct,
Okay.
So we'd have to include the motion to include with the proposed access.
They haven't
Or
yet-
we could take them down, is that, I'm not going to go up, but I was going to give them what they were
David?
originally.
You are asking for new access, right?
Why would I do that? I was doing the new access as a give to the other community that we're adjacent to. There's no reason for me to create another access
Ladies
and
and
build more
gentlemen.
for the same thing, to get approval of what's that's already approved. I mean, I'm getting nothing but just added cost. So, I mean.
So if you deny it, it will stay with the existing PUD the way it is.
Okay.
Do you want to
Then
withdraw?
I'll withdraw that motion, and I'll make a motion to deny the request as it's been presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Stone with a second by Commissioner Gold for denial. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. So, ladies and gentlemen, I need you to maintain order. We have to finish our meeting. All right, I will now look for a motion for
Motion to
the
move the
adoption of the
ordinances.
ordinance.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Zalek with a second by Commissioner Stone to move 14D1, 14D2, and 14D through any further, D3. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? With no further business to come, that motion passes unanimously. I'm sorry, Madam Clerk. With no further business to come before the board, we will be adjourned. Down south.
I'm hoping my wife was really a gem and packed for me while I was here. We'll find out very shortly.
I'm mostly ready, I just have to go.
They denied, yes, sir. There was no incentive to do that.
I had a lot of
You
stuff
got
ready last night, and then this morning in the rush. I asked
Although,
them
with
to
what's
do
gonna happen out there, that property,
She let me know
that's gonna be so
about it.
valuable.
Yeah, I told you
Demand is
that's
gonna be so
what I
high,
said.
they're gonna make plenty of money.